Into this edition of Unidentified History, a special year-end edition that we are doing here today. Hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Chris Mahana Kwanzaa, whatever you guys are into. I hope it was excellent for everybody involved. Glad you guys could come in and join this one. We only 16 minutes late today, guys. I mean that's pretty good. Considering trying to figure out why certain things aren't working. But anyway, cool. I am, of course, your host for Unidentified History, the lawyer Dave Unger, coming to you here today, the day after Christmas, joined by a couple of my very good friends to talk about what this episode is going to be is the year in ufology. We're going to kind of go through the year 2025, play some clips for you guys, talk about some of the bigger events that we've had here in ufology. Probably take about the first hour of the show to do that. And then we're going to transition into our first official side quest on Unidentified History that we're doing here at the very end of the year. It is the man Rob Bennett's idea to do this thing, and Rob is still not centered in the middle of the screen. I got to work on this with you, Rob. There you go. Look at everybody wants to see that beautiful face there. Now that's perfect. This this side project, we're going to be covering the Tunguska event of 1908. And we got some interesting stuff to talk about with Tunguska on this episode. Not necessarily UAP related, but anyway, we're going to get to that in a minute. But let me welcome into the show. Unfortunately, PC Tunney can't be here today. He got sick. He's got a sore throat. He says he can't talk, whatever that may mean or not mean. You know, I hope he feels better. But I do have with me two of the other stalwarts here of Unidentified History. Going to welcome him in back to the show for the first time in a bit. It's been a while since we got DJ on here, man. Deej, how the hell you doing, brother? Glad to see you here. How was your Christmas?
My Christmas was excellent. Good quality family time, well spent. Had a good meal. Unfortunately, I am in just the middle of probably the busiest month of work that I've had in quite a while. I'm sad that I've missed a couple episodes of this. I've missed a couple episodes of the Big Five Project. Just been working like a maniac through the end of the year. I've got some big vacations and things coming up in 2026. That requires money, me to work. So that's what I'm doing. But I'm glad to be back here tonight. Glad to be back on the show with you. I've missed talking to my friends with this kind of stuff, and I'm here for it.
Awesome. Yeah, just checking out what's going on over on X and on YouTube right now. We'll see what we get some folks in here on this live stream to talk about the end of the year in ufology. Also welcoming into the show, back to the show, the man whose idea this kind of side quest is. The one and only, the genius himself, Rob Burnett. Rob, how was your Christmas? I know the Commanders didn't do us any damn favors by losing to the Cowboys, but you know, they were more competitive than I thought they would be, Rob. I mean, it was looking
Yeah.
pretty bleak there for a while. But so, how was your Christmas, man?
Oh, it was good, man. Other than that, and look, at least I thought they were going to get blown out, but they kept it really competitive down to the end. And you know, I was kind of happy for well, I mean, Josh Johnson. They got him off of the scrap heap, and I didn't realize he was 39 years old. So I mean, he's up there in age himself, and just I guess hearing him talk after the game, yeah, he was just grateful for another opportunity to show people that he can actually play quarterback halfway decent. I wish we'd won, but I mean, it is what it is. Hey, we get a
Uh,
better draft pick, so
got to
that
preserve
way,
our
this
draft.
way,
Yeah, got to preserve our draft position. Exactly, man.
yes.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's been that kind of season. So, anyway, I'm glad you guys are here with me here today, and I know you got your cat with you too. So that's kind of like Tunney. I mean, Tunney's got gets his kitties out here and that sort of stuff. So, um, kind of got a brand new logo for the show that we worked on that I collaborated with my good friends here to see about this logo, whether it did any a little bit more, I don't know, it's a little bit more snazzy than the other one. But let's get into it, guys. Oh, what happened? Something went wrong and Rob is not recording. Everyone else is
Uh-oh.
being ask Rob to refresh, then rejoin from a
Uh-oh.
regular browser, not incognito.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, we lost Rob, Deej.
Yeah, hopefully
Maybe
he'll be
he'll come
back. And also, something's up with my computer. It won't let me do picture in picture. It shut down that function for me. So this is wonderful.
Okay.
We're off to a great start here tonight.
Okay.
Nothing. We're live, pal. We're live, pal. Yeah, this thing's doing some weird stuff with my headphones. But anyway, let's kind of get into it. Let's talk about see what's going on. Rob is back, I believe, and it does say he's recording, so
Yes.
everything looks like it should be all right. All right.
Yes, I mean.
I first kind of, what's that? He's there. I see him now.
Oh no, I
Rob's
said
there.
we're
Okay.
Yeah,
So
looks
I don't
good on
know.
my end. Sounds good too.
Okay. So we'll see. Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about, and it was obviously a really big year in ufology, and unidentified history got going in May of this year, where and I think it was like near the end of last year, right, DJ, when I started talking to you and Tunney when we first came up with Game Gone Wrong and kind of the side project for Attitude of Aggression, and started thinking maybe I should branch out into this area that I've always been so passionate and interested about. I know you and I had talked about some paranormal stuff as well on the side, and
Right.
just kind of never really thought about, hey, let's go in this direction and do anything official. And then it kind of built up and built up, and I said, yeah, let's do something. Once I had something non-pro wrestling related on Attitude of Aggression, it made getting into this a little bit easier. But so we've been doing this since May, and we've touched on quite a few historical events. But the first part of this episode, let's take a look at some of the bigger stories from ufology, UAPs, UFOs this past year. And I don't know if let's see if it'll let me share my screen, because what I really want to do first is I want to go back to I think the biggest story that happened this past year is probably the September UAP hearings, September 9th hearings, where we got the whistleblower testimony. We had testimony from Jeff Nusatelli. We had Chief Wiggins. We had Dylan Borland was there. Joe Spielberger was there. And of course, the godfather of ufology himself, George Knapp. So they all testified at the hearing. During the hearing, and this is the first part, we're going to get into something interesting to see if I can actually share this, because it's not letting me do it the opposite way. I want to go back to probably the most controversial aspect of the hearing, and that was the Hellfire missile video, the video that they showed at the hearing that Representative Burleson dropped on everybody and said, okay, here is this video that we've got of what you see. Well, let's see if we can get the video up first. Okay. We want to do the screen. They're going to let me share the screen. Okay. Maybe not. Window. Probably not. Well, let's see. This is great stuff. Live TV, guys. You got to love this stuff, right? Let's see. I don't know.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Sharing anything, guys?
Not on my end. Like I said, I told you my it gave me an error. There was an issue with my hard. Wait a minute. Here we go.
Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. We're good.
Okay.
Now it's working. This is good. Okay.
Okay. So this is the video, and I'm just going to shut up right now. We'll talk in a minute. So this, of course, is and you get the video, and you actually see this thing down here wobbling around and taking off, and it goes, and I think you guys can see the cursor, right? I'm kind of pointing at this.
Yeah,
thing.
I can see where you're pointing to.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the object after it's been struck. So, yeah. All right, so let's stop sharing that and go back on here. So, this video was the big controversial moment of the hearing, right? And it certainly got people talking about the whole incident and the whole hearing and what was depicted when it first happened. And we all saw this. And I know we did. DJ, you were on there where we did the recap of the hearing, right? I don't think Rob was on that episode. Or it was
I
me.
think
I
was there for some of that. Yes.
Yeah. And so like this video got the people talking, got the public talking about it. Like, what is that thing? Is that a Hellfire missile that had actually struck a UAP like that? And the UAP just shrugged it off and kept on going. Now, the video has largely been at least to a great extent, has been debunked, or at least attempted to be debunked. No one knows for sure what this thing is, right? Most of us, myself included, think it's a soft target. I've heard everything from, it's a training balloon, it's a balloon with a payload, it's a I've heard stuff about the missile itself not being one with an explosive device, that the missile was something that had blades instead of an explosive device to it, something like that. That it was, and I think like one of the best explanations I heard was over on that UFO podcast, Danny McGrillen's show, and in his Discord, there was a guy at the time. He was known by S, right? And then I think he emerged as he changed his name to Spectre. And Spectre had indicated that his belief was, and I think like even Avi Loeb may have, and of course, DJ, Avi Loeb from the Three Eye Atlas, all that stuff going on. So
yes.
Avi and this guy had both kind of suggested that what was going on with the missile was that it was a soft enough target that the impact that this thing made wasn't strong enough to actually trigger the explosive mechanism, which kind of does make sense. Whatever the video shows or doesn't show, I think the most important aspect of this was it sensational? Yes. Was it something that maybe should have been vetted a little bit more closely by Representative Burleson before he dropped it on the world? Possibly. Did it get everybody talking? Absolutely. And I've been one of the ones who said, whatever it is or isn't, it got people really talking about this and really looking at this stuff and saying, what is that in that video? I personally, I've said this several times. I think it's a soft target. The way it reacts when it gets hit, where it just kind of flutters away and those three things pop off from it, looks like debris, could be the payload on a actual balloon. And I know, like when I said balloon, I saw Rob laughing. I know, Rob, it sounds absurd because every time these things come up, it's a fucking balloon, right? So you just get, you get. What's that?
It's a training exercise. That's the favorite excuse.
Yeah.
It's military.
Right. It sounds ridiculous.
Training exercise.
It does. Now, in this situation, there may be some truth to that, and no one knows for sure. No one knows exactly what it is. It is classified, like Jeremy Corbell had said. It was classified as a UAP, so there is that aspect to it. But I want to go to you guys first. And Rob, I know we never talked to you about this video before. What did you see in that video? Your thoughts on this video, and is it a Hellfire missile at all? Is it a missile attacking a UAP? Is it just something that looks kind of interesting? But I mean, of course, the grander question is, why are we firing on UFOs if that's what this really was?
Right.
But I go to you first, sir.
Well, it's one of those things that it is just vague enough where you can call it whatever you want. I think, which is it could very well be that. It could be, as Agent K said in Men in Black, it was a swamp gas or whatever.
Yeah, that J. Allen Hynek's swamp gas, exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's one of those things. It could be whatever you want to make it out to be. It could be. I really hope we're not just randomly firing on unidentified flying objects. I don't think that's a good idea, because
it's not a good look.
No, because what happens if the thing no sells it and then just turns around and says, "Okay, you guys want to play?"
I like that Rob brought the pro wrestling analogy into this thing, and the UFOs just no selling the shit out of this and said, "Oh, all right, no, that's not going to work for us, brothers. We're going to have to blow you off the face of the planet." No, that would not be good, but I get it, and that's a good point. Deej, I know you had commented on this, and we talked about it when it first happened. And I don't know, you watching it back here today, all these months later, you've heard all the debunking of this thing. Where are you on this thing? You think it's a UFO? Do you think it's something more prosaic, something in between? I'm not sure how it could be something in between, but perhaps.
I'm going to start by saying, by its definition, it is a UAP, because UAP is unidentified. We cannot identify what the flying object is. anomalous. It is definitely an anomaly on this video and phenomenon. So by definition, yes, that is what it is. Do I think it's alien in nature? I don't. After months of digesting this, watching the video, my gut is telling me that this was a non-live fire training exercise. That this was a soft target. This was not a an armed missile. They were training, whether they were testing telemetry or whatever they were testing. My gut is telling me this was a test rocket and a test target.
I tend to agree with you. I really do, because it has a lot of the characteristics, just the way it I did when I was following it with the cursor there for you guys and kind of looking around and going, the trajectory where you do see it wobble and it just kind of keeps going, kind of cuts against the soft target thing, because if it was a soft target, it would have just fluttered and deflated gradually. This thing keeps going. But there's so many things, like Metabunk did some stuff involving parallax, which is kind of one of the objections to the Go Fast video, that it's a parallax effect and that sort of thing. So I tend to agree with you. To me, it feels like a soft target. All the explanations I've read and looked into feel like soft target training balloon, training exercise, or something that just wasn't strong enough to trigger the explosive device mechanism on this missile, assuming the missile was armed in the first place, right? We don't even know if the missile was armed in the first place. But I think the big thing about the video that stands out to me is it got people talking, and there's going to be another event that we're going to talk about in a few minutes that got people talking. This was a big deal that got mainstream media attention, had all sorts of people talking about this. What is that thing? Was that a real UFO? Did we really fire on a UFO? What, like you're saying, like Rob's saying, I really hope we're not just out here capriciously shooting on UFOs and hoping that they're just going to put up with that crap, because eventually they may not. Switching gears, let's talk about the other aspect of the September 9th hearing. And actually, a lot of what was going on this year was more like the year of the whistleblower. I mean, we had some major whistleblowers to come out. Now, let's see. This is the first time I'm going to try this thing. This is a clip I want to show you guys. And the Hellfire missile video, I got that straight from Representative Eric Burleson's X account. This is a clip from News Nation did some coverage on the September 9th hearing and some select aspects of the hearing from the whistleblowers. But there's also some commentary involved that I think is very important to the September 9th hearing. And I just kind of want to play this, and let's see if this actually works here.
Someone would see a light. They would pay attention to the light. And then the object responds, it performs for you. And then they come down and they investigate you. So it's almost like they're curious.
The craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
Do you think that any of this is a psyop by the U.S. government?
Our government and other governments have admitted that they've tried to use UFOs to cover secret projects.
A lot of what we heard in there from witnesses were more direct pleas to lawmakers to pass legislation that protects whistleblowers. There was a stigma around this kind of UAP or UFO reporting. If you were in the military, it was frowned upon to talk to your supervisors, talk to your higher ups about what you saw. They want that culture to change, to make it more easy for people to report these kinds of things, because in their view, it's a national security issue. We don't know what these things are that are flying around in our airspace and in our waters near our military sites and our vehicles. And so the more reporting about this, the more transparency on this issue, these people who were in the military who testified say, all the better.
So that's just a little bit from News Nation about the September 9th hearing. And I think, the big thing that I took away from those hearings is, of course, you've got the sensational testimony of like Jeff Nusatelli talking about the incident at Vandenberg Air Force Base and what they witnessed. These guys witnessing these rectangular football field sized objects coming in off the coast, hovering above the facility and things like that. And you're like, well, that's odd. You've got Dylan Borland, who came out as one of the more impressive and more, I'd say, And now, of course, somebody's going to get here and bother me with the dog. The dogs are upset. One of the more impressive whistleblowers who offered the testimony at this thing, who talked so much about the equilateral triangle that came over. I think he was stationed at Langley Air Force Base. And he talked a lot about that. Hold on a sec here. Go here. Live TV is great, guys, or live podcasting is great when this stuff happens.
Live
Anyway,
without a net, pals.
I tell you, man, it'll sound great on the final episode when we can edit the dogs out. But no, Dylan Borland did a lot of testimony about the black equilateral triangle above Langley Air Force Base. Very impressive. He talked a lot about, and I think he and Spielberger as well kind of emphasized one of the biggest issues that I took away from the hearing. And it is this conundrum because you get these guys who are talking, right? And we always come back to the same thing. There's things I want to tell you that I can't because it's classified and you don't have the proper security clearance. And they're telling this to members of Congress, right? So you've got this conundrum, this issue that's been going on since the first hearings happened, when we started having hearings again in 2023, well, 2022, actually, but the big ones started happening in 2023, is you get these guys who come out here and they can disclose certain things to you, but the real classified stuff, they can't because it's, everybody in the room has got to have the proper security clearance. It's not just like you've got to have like top secret clearance. You got to have like damn near Q clearances and things like that in order to even receive this stuff. And, and I think, Rob, I know we talked about this on one of these episodes that, a big problem is it's the state of the law. It is that the executive branch has most of the control over this classification. Not to mention whether this stuff's overclassified in the first place, whether this is, like Jeff Nusatelli, since the hearing has repeatedly come on and says reality is classified. That's been one of his big catchphrases, which is absolutely true. And kudos to Jeff for going out there and doing that. But, you've got this big issue that you can't get around, that unless everybody has the appropriate security clearance, there's nothing these guys can do that is legal. Right. And that's the big problem is everybody wants the evidence. Everybody wants a smoking gun. Where's the 4K pictures? Where's the alien bodies? Where's a piece of metal metallurgically tested to establish that this is not from this planet? And the problem is and I understand everybody getting frustrated. Everybody gets frustrated by this whole thing. Well, why is it overclassified? Why is this, that? Why can't we just have it? It's the way that the system is set up. And Spielberger in his written statement exemplified that while we do need to get whistleblowers greater protection, there's no doubt about that. We also have to make it so that they're not set up to fail in the first place, don't we? So that you get these guys in here and say, well, look, here's what we've got for you. We can protect you up to a certain point, but if you breach that point, whether it's a judgment call or not, then you've violated the Espionage Act, which, as Dylan Borland had said during this hearing, a different part of the testimony, that Espionage Act is punishable by death. Yes. If you fuck up there, you put yourself in a terrible situation where you can be killed. It's not just being incarcerated; they can go all the way if they really wanted to. So we've got to get greater whistleblower protection, yes, but we've got to fix the law a little bit so that even if it's something like an independent body, which I think is one of the things that Joe Spielberger for Pogo is the agency he works for, was suggesting an independent third body with full clearance to take this information and vet it, say, okay, is this as classified as the government is claiming it is, as the executive branch is claiming it is? Can this be disseminated? Should this be disseminated? You got to have something like that, some independent, non-biased third party to come in here and say, we can hear what you have to say, and then we can determine the appropriate next steps. But right now, the law's not set up that way. Everybody's clamoring, we want Trump to disclose. We want Trump to disclose. He's not going to, because there's nothing in it for him other than relinquishing power or control or possibly money. And as we've said 1,000 times on this show in the brief time it's been on the air, money, power, and control. That's the big three. So no one's going to do that. Yeah, Trump's not going to do that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, what you were saying about the possible penalty, because we've been in this kind of nebulous state of war since 9/11. So, and yeah, getting convicted of espionage during wartime, you're out of here. So, I mean, if they want to do it, you're out of here. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be very easy for any president to at any time to basically nail you on that if you talk too much. So, like, yeah, like you're saying, yeah, I mean, like, the laws have to be changed so that something like this cannot fall under espionage.
And you don't want to put these guys in this kind of weird position where, I mean, it's bad enough that they sit there in every interview that they do with anybody. They've got to sit there and think, am I going too far? Am I saying too much? Have the guys who are writing the books that have to be Dobster approved? And that process takes a year or more, right? But if you're there in front of a Congress and you're testifying in a congressional hearing, you shouldn't have to sit there and say, shit, can I say this? What should I say? Should I, these, and I'm not criticizing the whistleblowers for being in that position. I'm saying they shouldn't have to be in that position, especially if they're in a congressional hearing, right? Deej, or am I on the right path, or do you think I'm off on this one?
No, I think you're on the right path, and the laws definitely do need to change. At this point, I seriously question why so many safeguards are in place for this type of stuff in 2025. And we discussed it in a larger sense. Can humanity handle the truth no matter what the truth is? The answer realistically is no, but the answer is also yes, because again, as our technology that we have available to just as laymen, gets better and better, if there are indeed otherworldly beings visiting us. And the way I equated it was early on in this series, when we watch a nature show like a Wild Kingdom or a Planet Earth or something like that, the goal of the people observing the creatures is to not be seen, not disturb the natural wildlife and the habitat of the people they're observing. And I have to imagine that if we are being watched, if we are being observed, they are operating under the same type of philosophy. We're not here to endanger. We're not here to disrupt. We're here, but again, like us doing our nature shows, occasionally the animal sees the animal comes across you. There's interaction. There's crossover, and there's crossover between us and them. And as technology in our very hands gets better and better, that crossover is going to become more and more prevalent. And you reach a point where there's going to be so much crossover with the general public that whatever the government is hiding, I'm showing you actual video of an actual thing, and you're telling me it doesn't exist. And you have similar or the same video under wraps, and these people aren't allowed to talk about it in a congressional hearing, is just at this point kind of archaic to me. And I feel like the laws do need to change. And the government, if it's a matter of control and power, you can still control the narrative. Like, you can control the release of information. You can say, okay, this is what we're doing with it, but we have this situation. We understand what it is. We know what it is. We know what it isn't. There's no cause for alarm. As far as money, that is the bigger question mark in the air, because if this is something from a technological standpoint, if we're reverse engineering technology, we're making better war equipment, better space equipment, and we don't want to lose ground to other countries. If this is why we're keeping it under wraps, then now we're having an entirely different discussion, because at the end of the day, especially in a capitalist society, it runs on money. And if they're keeping this stuff under wraps because there are technologies and things like that they don't want our enemies, quote unquote, to get their hands on, then that may be very much why they keep such a tight lid on it.
No,
Yeah,
and you're right. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead.
I was just going to co-sign that totally.
Yeah, and I think, like DJ's saying, there are, and I don't want to get the wrong idea. I mean, there are national security concerns involved here. There certainly
Absolutely.
are. Like you're saying, if we've reverse engineered something that has given us a tactical advantage, especially when you look at, something that we're not going to get too deep into the weeds on it because it takes up too much time. But like the drone situation that is still ongoing, we've been talking about that all year. Drones are flying over Europe, over New Jersey, over all these other places. They can't be stopped. Now in the NDAA, the latest NDAA, there's some UAS provisions, right? Which I've heard a couple people say use UAS interchangeably with UAP, and they're not. Uh, let's get that out of the way. They're not the same thing, but um, you've got provisions where people are starting to take that stuff more seriously because they can't be tracked, they can't be shot down, they can't be jammed, that sort of thing. So, like you're saying, Deej, if there's a significant national security reason why we need to be more alert of this or more protective of it, especially, yeah, if you do think that our adversaries have got a technical or tactical advantage on us, you don't want to give that away if you think you've got the leg up on them. But at the same time, though, like the Secrets Task Force was coming out of the House Oversight Committee, right? How do you have a committee providing oversight on a topic that they're not even empowered to really oversee? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, does that make sense? It's
Not a
like
bit.
you've got what's that, Deej?
Not a bit of sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. So what I'm saying makes sense, or does it, right? Or
No, them having power over
Okay.
something that means you made.
I thought you
Overseeing
were just
something
saying,
that
well,
they really
I thought this was like the Big Five project, and you're going to say, Dave, you ignorant slut. That is not anybody. That makes
No.
no goddamn sense at all. Okay, no.
I
No,
wouldn't do
I
that
was
to
like,
you. You are much more knowledgeable about this entire topic than I am. On the wrestling stuff, you and I are a little more on the same playing field. This,
Yes.
you've got me beat by a mile, man.
well, it's just because I study this stuff all the time. Anyway, the doctor doesn't need to know about that, DJ. No. So look, the thing but yeah, it's like it is the proverbial one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. We want you to oversee this stuff, but not too much. Not too much. We don't want to give you all the power that you need to actually effectively do what we've told you to do. Just do enough. So it's lip service and it's disingenuous and that sort of thing. But other thing, like the other big, we had all the whistleblowers who came out at the hearing earlier in the year, though. The guy, this hat here, Invisible Frontiers, Matthew Brown. It's Matthew Brown's brand. I unashamedly support Matthew and everything that he does because he's the one who wrote the Immaculate Constellation document at the end of last year. That for a while there, you couldn't even say the words Immaculate Constellation without like somebody tracking you. So don't say it, guys. I'll take the bullet on this. I'll be the one saying Immaculate Constellation. But no, Matt wrote that. He did I think it was a 3-part interview with on Weaponized with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, and said so many interesting things and so many fascinating things about the topic, and really kind of blew the lid off of a few things. And then Dylan Borland came out later on after the hearings and did something similar with Jeremy and George. So I think it's been a big year for whistleblowers, an important year for whistleblowers. I would urge anybody go check out. Matt's been writing some remarkable stuff over on Substack, like really deep, like super deep. I'm not you guys know this. I'm not dumb, and this stuff throws me, and I'm like, I grasp like 50-60% of what they just said there. But Matt's doing tremendous work over there. By all means, support his brand, Invisible Frontiers. The big thing you can't forget about these whistleblowers is that a lot of them lost their jobs from this situation. David Grush, like, you guys, we'll talk about Moment of Contact a little bit later on, but like David Grush was like a year away from his 20-year retirement when he walked away due to his frustration over everything. So he lost all of his benefits. Dylan Borland, lost his benefits, because of this stuff that for coming over for Matthew Brown, same situation. All these guys gave up. They could have kept quiet. They could have kept their mouths shut, just gone along with the program. They, for whatever reason, a bigger calling, a bigger need, the need for transparency let humanity know what's really going on. They took that upon themselves, and they've all paid a financial price for sure. So I have no problem going out and supporting these guys who are like have been brave enough to do this, to step forward, brave enough to step out of the shadows and say, here's what's really going on. And they paid for it. So I have no problem supporting them or unashamedly coming out here and asking people, support them, because they've earned that right to do that. So you guys got any more comments on whistleblowers before we move into our next topic of conversation here?
I just look.
Rob's thinking.
Yeah, I've always been supportive of them, and we as a society should be, because they're the ones that basically put stuff out there that's that's being hidden from us. And when it comes to this, whether stuff is being overclassified or whether there's some like real threat out there, I'd say we deserve to know more than we know, right? More than we're being told right now. And so these guys, they need to be supported and they need to be protected as best as possible.
Absolutely. That is the best way you could put it, Rob. So I think we can all kind of agree on that point. So these guys are brave enough to do the things that a lot of people don't want to do. And I think that's very important all around. The next topic I want to get into is talking about the age of disclosure a little bit. And now anybody who's watched the show knows that Tunney and I came on here after I'd seen the Age of Disclosure, the premiere in LA on November 21st. And the movie's been out for, a little bit over a month now. And it is the #1 selling documentary in the history of Amazon Prime. So to say it's a big hit is an understatement. Let's take a look at another clip that we got. I got this off the Age of Disclosure, their own YouTube thing. It's a little clip involving the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. And Marco recently came on Sean Hannity, and I won't say he walked back some of this stuff he said, but he kind of tempered things a little bit. But not with respect to this that I want to play right now. So let's see if I can't get this to play. This is from a clip from the Age of Disclosure site itself. And here we go.
I think there's this assumption that presidents can walk in the Oval Office on day one and say, all right, take me to Roswell, show me the alien bodies. I want to see the video of the autopsy. I want to see the whole thing, open it up. I think that really is a naive understanding of how our government works. Even presidents have been operating on a need-to-know basis. The rationale, the justification was, the president shouldn't know about these things because that way the president always has deniability. All they need is a nod in this direction or in that direction. But that begins to ramp out of control. Frankly, I don't even know if the president would know who to ask. You could go to the director of the CIA, nowadays the director of national intelligence, and ask them. And even that person may not know because those people rotate. But the people 3 layers underneath them that are there for 30 years, to them, it's like I've seen these people come and go. And unless they ask, I have no obligation to tell them it exists.
So this is something that Tunney and I talked about when we did the review of Age of Disclosure. And, there's obviously been a lot of pushback on the movie from certain segments. The big criticism, of course, is that it's 34 people, military people, scientists, witnesses. All of it's anecdotal. All of it's just stories. There's no hard evidence has been put forward. A lot of the reviews that have been critical of Age of Disclosure have said that, have mirrored that this is nothing new. Nobody came forward and said, and no one came forward and did anything with this that hadn't already been said before in one respect or another. And I think Tunney and I kind of agreed on that point that, from the standpoint of people like me who have heard a lot of this stuff before, it didn't really move the needle. It didn't say a whole lot to me. It didn't add anything new. But to a lot of the other people, and the movie got mainstream attention, got mainstream attraction going. People were very much so, you got CNN, you had Brett Baer, you had Fox, you had all these mainstream outlets start covering the Age of Disclosure, asking questions. You had Dan Farrar getting on what is, hold on. Hey, what are you doing? My dog's destroying a pillow. So that's good. No, you don't need to be doing that. Yes. Uh,
Ladies and
Anyway,
gentlemen, we are
so-
again live without a net.
Yes, this
That's
is
right. And this is what having dogs in your recording studio will do for you kids. But anyway, the whole notion of this getting mainstream attention, Dan Farrow showing up on Joe Rogan of all places and having it, it's the most biggest podcast in the land right now. So you had Dan Farrow on there talking about all this stuff. But that statement there by Marco Rubio really exemplified one of the main points I know Tony and I talked about in our review. It's that everybody assumes that the president knows everything, right? And it is very much like an Independence Day, where they go to Area 51 for that first time, and Bill Pullman's like, "Why wasn't I told about this?" And the other guy's like, "Two words, Mr. President: plausible deniability." Right? And that's what this is all about. It's about, we don't want the president to know everything because we want him to be able to deny that he knows anything. The bigger issue is that you've got presidents who are subject to term limits, right? You got these guys who are going to be there for a few years, 8 years at most, unless Trump comes up with a way to get a third term. But we're not going to get into that right now, that sort of thing. But at most, they're there for 8 years. Meanwhile, you got some guy who's been in the program, like they're saying, and he's been in there. He's been there for all these years, like 30 years, a 30-year career employee in the government, right? Who's been in this thing, and in his mind, the question of disclosure and what can the public actually handle is, he's like, and I think Tony's asking questions, what can the public handle is a very good question, that sort of thing. And I think like this goes down to that whole thing where you've got somebody who's been there forever saying, why should I give a crap about what somebody who's going to be here for a little bit of period of time thinks about this? I'm the one who knows better. I've seen this from start to finish. I know what's best for the country. And of course, anybody listening to that who's not educated on the topic is going to be like, wait, what? The president of the United States is the elected official. He's the one in charge of all this, not some dude in a basement somewhere who's been there for 20 years thinking, I'm the one who really knows what's best for everybody. So I never got, I don't, and Deej, let me go to you first on that, because we didn't get you on the Age of Disclosure review, but what's your thoughts on this, that, you've got somebody who's not the president of the United States, who is the one who's really pulling the strings as far as what the public can know, what they should know, what the president can know, what elected officials can know. It seems counterintuitive and backwards ass is all get out, isn't it? Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing it does is it reminds people that regardless of what we think, one, the president doesn't have nearly as much power as people think the president has. And in many ways, the president is very much a puppet of everything, like a lot of other people are. And that there are people equally, if not more powerful than the president, pulling those strings. So, and that speaks in government abroad, not just in the interest of disclosing UAP, type information. That just speaks to the government at large. As far as, and I haven't really spoken much, I haven't really watched the Age of Disclosure, but I've seen a lot of the discourse, and I've seen the positive reviews, the negative reviews, and what I can take from it is this is really a documentary meant for somebody like me who's on the fence with all this. I've maintained since day one, I am team, I want to believe. I want you guys to sell me on this because I believe there's outside of Earth. I believe in that. Where I'm in the gray area is whether or not we've actually been visited by this life, because I have not seen anything concrete, hardcore to say, yeah, that's it. And I want to see it. I'm on that side that wants to see it and thinks we should disclose it. The problem that we run into with these types of documentaries is the people who either, like you, Dave, are deep, deep in the bubble. It didn't give you anything new. It didn't provide anything new. And the people on the other side of the spectrum who are dead set against it, don't believe it all, or don't want it disclosed, are looking at it going, see, there's nothing to disclose. They didn't tell you anything new. There's nothing to tell. That's why they didn't tell you anything. And I think that poses a big problem for people like yourself, and to a slightly lesser degree, people like me who want the disclosure. Because this is basically telling them, look, we made this big pomp and circumstance. We got all this mainstream attention, and there's all this big, and they didn't tell you anything, So we need to be careful in how we market things like this, because in my head, it's fueling the counter argument. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It does tend to steer. It makes the debunker's job much easier, doesn't it?
It
When they can
does.
sit there and point to this and say, you didn't show anything because there is nothing to show. Which kind of ties back into what we talked about a little while ago, earlier, about the whole notion of, is it that there's nothing to show, or is it that they can't show it? I want to show it, but I can't show it. That sort of thing. They're not letting me show this to you, and it's, you're almost at the point where you're proving a negative, right? At this
Chasing
stage,
our
and you
tails.
can't. What's that?
We're chasing our tails.
Yes. Yeah. The dog chasing hubcaps. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. It's the same thing that the Joker said in Dark Knight, but it's very much like that, where yeah, and I agree with you. It is definitely a movie, a documentary that was more designed, and I said this, and I stand by it, even a month and a half later. It is the perfect entry point for somebody like you, DJ, for example, who's like, team I want to believe, or even like a little bit below that. Somebody who's like, I don't know a whole lot about this. What's really going on? You mean this isn't just science fiction? There's actually more to it. There's some reality to this. Are UFOs real? Are aliens, NHI, whatever the hell you want to call them, are they real? And how are they getting across the galaxy? Oh, Age of Disclosure explains how they do that sort of thing. So there's a lot of really cool information in there. Rob, have you seen Age of Disclosure yet, or just caught stuff like DJ has on it?
No, I have not seen that one yet. But just in general with documentaries, yeah, a lot of them can be misleading, because in a lot of cases, the person making it they've already reached their conclusion, and they're trying basically to sell you on what they've already come to conclusion on. And sometimes they leave things out. Sometimes they, present things a certain way, and they're not necessarily lying, but sometimes things can be presented in such a way that, as if the conclusion is already drawn when it really isn't. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a day and age where documentaries are easier for people to kind of debunk, because to be frank, a lot of people take shortcuts. A lot of people leave stuff out. Because like a lot of those Michael Moore documentaries, like, I mean, if you watch them on face value, and then and then there's like a little tidbit of information he left out over here. There's a little something he slanted a certain way over there. And again, he's not lying, but he presented some things in a certain way that kind of back up what he believes. And there was a documentary with this. You remember? I don't know if you guys remember. It was Super Size Me. All right, and
Yeah.
Guy,
Right.
yeah, right, and guy was trying to prove how unhealthy McDonald's food was for you, but like every day he went and he ate like the worst possible stuff you could possibly have on the menu every day.
And if they asked him if they wanted a supersize, he had to say yes, right?
Yeah, and so he, at the end of the day, he didn't really prove anything, because you can go to McDonald's and you can eat things that are, I mean, you can eat McDonald's every day and eat it in such a way that it doesn't, cause all your organs to lock up on you and everything, right? I mean, that there are healthier options on the menu that you can choose from. And he made a choice to pick the worst possible thing every time. So that's just those examples of how these documentaries they present things in a certain way. And again, the person who makes it, they're not necessarily lying to you, but they are presenting things in such a way so that what they believe is, presented as if it has been already concluded without any doubt. And so, yeah, I mean, and in this case, so I mean, if there's no hard evidence being presented, if it's just them talking to people, then it's a little shaky,
Well, I agree with you to the extent that most documentaries, and probably most might be a little bit light. It's probably all. Well, not all, but you're going in there with a certain slant. You're going in there with a certain direction that you want to portray. And Age of Disclosure clearly was that, because one of the big complaints about Age of Disclosure was that there was no skeptical voice in there. They didn't get any of the skeptical people in there to kind of push back against what these other folks are saying. Um, and I get that, because that wasn't the goal of this thing. And why would you want to undercut your own documentary? And the message, like you're saying, Rob, the message they're trying to send is that there's this big 80-year cover up. Um, part of it was like, we need to get around that. We need to get better protection so that people can come forward. We need to get the public more educated, so forth and so on.
Yeah.
And I think
I was
from
going
the
to jump in real
standpoint
quick.
yeah,
Just when it comes, look, if you're going to but the whole point of science is to find the answer, and and sometimes when you're doing any type of scientific experiment, or doing any type of investigative reporting or whatever, sometimes you find out that what you thought was the case is just not true, and or sometimes you find out that there is no answer, and you got to be willing to just say, okay, I mean, we got nothing,
yeah, and you're right. The point of science is to find out the answers, but of course, you got to be provided with the right chemicals, right? You got to be
Yeah.
provided with the right materials in order to conduct the experiment effectively. It's if you're trying to make like something explosive, like I want to make something that's going to explode. Well, here's some water. Good luck figuring out how to make that explode. That sort of thing. Good. I mean, maybe somebody's going to figure out how to manipulate the atoms in there to get them the right way, but anyway, yeah, I think Age of Disclosure, there's still a lot of fallout from that. There's been a lot of controversy with that lately, with Age of Disclosure director Dan Farah allegedly, and I'm saying allegedly, trying to shut down watch parties. People are trying to get together and show the movie amongst friends because it costs $25. I think that's a little bit misleading. This most specific example involved a winery that was going to show the movie for a group of like 10 people. And Dan Farah allegedly told them, if you do this, and everybody's got to pay for it, or I'm going to sue you. And of course, the lawyer has to jump in here and say, wait a second, as there's a distinguishing point here. It's not that he's telling you, like if I have 5 people over tonight and say, hey, we're going to watch Age of Disclosure. If Dan says, no, everybody in your house watching that needs to pay me, I'm going to tell Dan to kiss my ass, because you're not going to tell me what to do in my own house. If I'm not charging anybody for it, I'm not making a profit off this thing. This is my private home. You want your movie back? Here, give me my $25 back. I'll remove this from my library. It's a little bit different when you're looking at a business establishment that, even though they're not charging for the movie, if it's a winery, if they're serving food, if they're serving wine, if they're making any money off of this free showing, you run into this very gray area, right? As to, okay, what is this, a for-profit venture? What's going on here? It's a cinema. Becomes a quasi cinema that's not licensed, right? It's not like the cinema that I saw in LA, which is a dedicated cinema. This is what we do. This is what our business license says. You start showing the movie to people, even if you're not charging them for the movie, but you're charging them for ancillary things on the side, you run into this problem, right? And that's what I think was really going on there. It's not that he's saying he's not saying me and DJ and Rob, I'm going to throw Age of Disclosure up right now on my Prime account. I'm going to share the screen. We're all going to watch it, and we're going to sing Kumbaya afterwards. I don't think that's what Dan Farah is complaining about. It's the whole thing about, well, you're kind of morphing this into a cinema, and you can't do that. It creates, and I won't even get into the possible liabilities of somebody like having a little bit too much wine to drink, driving home from the winery. We don't need to get into all that, because I know enough Southern California attorneys who will take that and run all the way to the end zone with it. So anyway, good stuff. I urge you guys to watch Age of Disclosure. Whatever anybody tells you about it or says about it, it is absolutely worth your time to make up your own mind. It is the perfect entry point, I think, to this topic, where you can get in there, you can get caught up on the last 7-8 years since the New York Times article came out. You can get caught up pretty quick, find out what's important, find out the stuff that interests you most out of the documentary. There's going to be elements of this show, of the movie, that will appeal to you more than others. You find those and then you dig a little bit deeper. And that's what I said the last time out as well, which I will repeat here. I think that's the best way you can approach Age of Disclosure. The next story we're going to go to, this is relatively new. This has only been out, this is like a couple of days old. It's actually an event, and not a lot of people are talking about this one yet, which is a little bit surprising, but I found it. And it's interesting, and hopefully this will work, because I'm going to play for you guys some audio here from, this was done on, there it is. Okay. So this is an event that happened in October over in the air above Rhode Island. And this is good. I think I got this from UAP Disclosure. I forget it. It's on the clip. I got this from UAP Disclosure organization or something like that. It's on there, but it is I think it's the FTC audio of this interchange between the pilot and air traffic control at this place in Rhode Island about this very odd sighting that happened. So let's see what we can come up with here.
Had no reports in that area. What altitude and direction is it heading?
It appears to be standing still. I'm at 3,500 feet. It was right off our wingtip. Small silver canister.
Roger, thanks. Do you think it's a drone or is it like a balloon type?
I saw nothing attached to it.
Okay, that's not coming out well. Let me see if I can do it, because the audio is horrible on that. Hold on. Let me get rid of this.
It was sort of hovering there. It was astonishing. I don't know what it was.
Creepy.
I want to believe.
Chrono 402, contact approach on 125.75.
25.75, Chrono 402. Good luck with the aliens.
So yeah, this is from UAP Disclosure Group, but let me see if I can't do it this way, because I think it's important to hear the audio on there. So, all right. Hold up with me, guys. Window. Okay. And hold on a second. I got it somewhere in here. So I think that came out pretty well that time, right? You guys could hear the audio okay the second time around?
Actually, I heard it the
No, I
first
heard
time.
it more the first time.
Yeah.
Heard it more the first time? Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
There was no audio the second time? Wow.
There was no audio at all on that last loop you just played.
Well, that's great. That's good to know.
I mean, the audio was clear as a bell on the first go around.
Was it? So it's something on my end. Okay. So well, in that case, right, live TV, folks. It's just the way to do it, man. So it's an interesting one, right? There's a pilot in Rhode Island talking about a silver canister hovering at 3,500 feet right outside of his wingtip, not going anywhere, not doing anything. And I found it interesting because, like, in that exchange with air traffic control, it's different. You see kind of the evolution of what's happening with pilots right now with this whole, where, like if you watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? That scene at the beginning with air traffic control in Indiana, where They go through all this stuff and it's like, do you want to report a UFO? And there's silence on the other end. It's like, do you want to report a UFO? Negative, tower. We don't want to report one of those. And then they ask the other plane, do you want to report one? It's like, no, we don't want to report one of those either. So been this stigma for all these years about pilots reporting this thing. And then here you get this interchange between a pilot and air traffic control. And they're even throwing in little funny things like from X-Files, like DJ, I want to believe, that sort of thing.
Right.
And then the very last thing air traffic control says as they cut off is good luck with the aliens. And they go away. And it's pretty cool to me to see like the pilots are now starting to more embrace this a little bit, that the stigma against this. And I know, like, I'd asked Chris Leto from the Leto Files through Andy's show once, whether he thought the stigma had lessened, because he's a former pilot, whether he thought the stigma had lessened at all for pilots to report these sort of events, right? And he was like, no, I really don't think that the stigma has lessened up all that much on this thing. So this seems to show that maybe that's changing a little bit, right? That there's some pilots are more willing to talk about this thing. And you see the exchanges like, well, is it a drone? Is it a balloon? It's like, no, it's thing stationary. It's a silver canister. Now in the video there, they showed something trailing after a plane. I don't think that's what this was at all. That was just done for dramatic effect from UAP Disclosure Group. But still, Rob, I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on that, this rather interesting event in the skies of Rhode Island a couple months ago.
Well, okay. Man. Look, if I looked out the window and I saw something back there like that, yeah, I'd probably be like, "Oh, what the hell is this?" Although, I mean, there have been reports over the past few weeks of like drones in the air around airplanes. I think, well, it was the guy Zelensky. There were some drones around one of his when he was flying home or something. I think when they were in close proximity. So that's something you need to worry about now, for sure. If you're some type of, if you have some, elected official or something on your plane, or somebody important on your plane, you do have to consider the possibility that somebody might be sending a drone after them. But I will say it's, again, to me, this goes back to science. Like, if you don't know what something is, the best thing to do is say, "Hey, man, I don't know what that is." And not, because look, I'm sure, like, for all these years and decades, these pilots, nobody wanted to be, tinfoil hat guy, right? Or nobody wanted to be the guy that said, "Oh, there's an alien over there," and it turned out to be a weather balloon or something, right? Nobody wanted to be that guy, right? Because they'd laugh at you every day, right? And they'd probably put, stickers of little green men in your locker or something, and all that type of stuff all the time, right? So I think it is good that they're more willing to talk about it, and they're more willing to at least, discuss with the tower or whatever that, hey, we're not sure what that thing is back there. Because again, when you don't know, the best thing to do is to say, "I don't know." Because that, that's, if you want to find out, the best thing to do is, if you don't know, the best thing to do is say, "Hey, man, I don't know what that is." And then you can honestly start on the road towards finding out what this stuff is. And if something is being hidden from us, then, putting it out there publicly, that on the radio, that, hey, I don't know what that thing is back there, that, that forces maybe some conversation inside. And I want to go back for a second to that clip of Rubio. He's right. And then what happens is that, because, yeah, you have people that work in these places for years and years and years. And what happens is, you can get elected officials come and go. And some elected officials are very smart and are very inquisitive and want to learn, and they're very honest about things, and they're great to work with. And some elected officials are morons. And those guys who've been in those places for all those years, they've seen enough of the morons that they just don't want to be bothered. But now, and again, but as far as this thing with the, you know, I think it's good that the pilots are more willing to talk about it now because, again, you know, if it is nothing, then okay, then we can find out it's nothing. We can better find out it's nothing by admitting at first again that we don't know what it is. So, you know, look, I always say again, if you don't know what it is, say, hey man, I don't know. And it's good that they're doing that more now.
Like, well, I think like pilots are a big key to this thing. I mean, if it's in the sky, who better to observe it than than pilots and people who are used to like knowing what's up there with me, what is up in the sky with me, and that sort of thing. It's like they're the best ones to really be the observers of UAP, you know, that sort of thing, whatever's up there. Deej, what'd you think of all that stuff with this silver canister and pilots kind of seemingly a little bit looser with their descriptions of what they're observing up there?
What I found interesting about the back and forth between the pilots and the tower was how I hesitate to use the word flippant, but flippant is the word that comes to mind. Almost like, yeah, we've got another one. Like, this is something that has now become commonplace discussion amongst pilots, amongst tower control, even though it has not come out publicly. Like, they're not out here publicly saying, hey, I saw, you know, something flying alongside of my wing on such and such date. Amongst themselves, they're a bit more, this is another day at the office. We don't know what it is. It's awful weird. Hey, it might be aliens, and they're cracking jokes about it. You know, so that to me is a tell that this happens more often than we know. It happens more frequently than we're told, and that the pilots talk amongst themselves. Like there's a network amongst themselves, even if they're not coming out publicly, which to me says a lot, you know, about the frequency of these type of events.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Deej, that there is a flippancy about this. There's a I'm not going to say joviality about it, but there's
Right.
certainly a lightness to this whole thing that yeah, it's another one of these damn things again. And it is you've gotten to the point where there's this interchange between, like you're saying, the pilot and the tower, where it is not like I distinctly draw that comparison to Close Encounters, because the tension in that whole, if you know what I'm talking about, the tension between the pilots and the towers and what's going on
Yeah.
is palpable compared to like this, which is like, well,
There's
is
no
it this?
tension
Is it
here.
that? What's that?
There's no tension in this dialogue at all.
No, it's just like throwing in X-Files, I want to believe, you know, that sort of thing. Good luck with the aliens. I mean, you're right. It is very flippant. I don't want to say that they're just not taking it seriously, because obviously anything up there with a plane is something that the tower needs to take seriously. Now, whether this had a radar return, and I'm sure there'll be like a FOIA request any day now to give me all the information on this stuff, give me the radar returns and that sort of thing. But you're right. It is interesting to see this evolution in what pilots are saying about these whatever's up in the sky with them. And I think on the one hand, it's great that they are more forthcoming with, hey, here's what we're observing, guys. On the other part, like you're saying, it's a little concerning that, hey, dudes, you need to take this shit seriously. If there's something up there with planes, because yeah, this is fine for this. There's no harm, no foul. But you know, you look at all the aviation accidents we've had in the last year, and you start to really second guess, what if there's something up there that caused this shit, and you just flippantly blew it off? It's like, oh, this is just, you know, it's a flock of seagulls, you know, that sort of thing. Not the
And that brings us back to the question of public safety and national security.
Right. And you know, you got to take this stuff seriously. And I think you raised a really good point. It's like, was that a little bit too unserious? Maybe. But at the same time, it is, but then you don't want to swing to the other way where it's not, where it used to be too stigmatized, and now we're at the point where it's not stigmatized enough at all, and they're not taking it seriously at all in the other direction. So it's like, oh yeah, it's just another one of these UFOs, man. No big deal. We see those 3 times a day, you know, that sort of shit. So, all right. I guess, you know, I can't play this next thing because you guys are saying when I shared the screen, there's no audio. Is that what you heard? No audio from that, right?
Well, it's the second time there wasn't. We heard it the first time.
Okay, so I'm not even going to bother. I had a really good stuff because I want to move into Moment of Contact, the new James Fox movie, the revelations about that, and talk about that briefly here. And I had a clip from American Alchemy, which had like the very end of the new movie. You guys, I think you guys both watched the original version, but not the new version. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Deech, did you get through the original version of Moment of Contact?
I made it about 40 minutes in before I just had to call it a night.
Okay. All right. So, Moment of Contact: New Revelations is it is a director's cut of James Fox's original Moment of Contact that came out when yeah, Tony said you can hear your clips live. Yeah, Tony, thank you so much, buddy. I know that it's the stuff where I'm sharing the screen that there's no audio apparently coming through on it. The Hellfire missile was okay because there's no audio on that as well. But this whole thing, this 100, when I play the clips live, I know that's coming through fine. But this is 100 megabyte limit. Anyway, nobody at home cares about that. But anyway, Moment of Contact: New Revelations is James Fox's director's cut of the original version he filmed in 2022, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's all about the 1996 Varginha, Brazil incident, which we will cover in depth on a future episode of this show. But this new-ish, I'll say new-ish edition, added in some context from the recent hearings. Got some additional information with Eric Davis, who is prominent in Age of Disclosure as well. And Eric Davis is the one, like at the end in a post-credit scene. I'll say post-credit, but it's the credits are rolling, and he's talking. And this was all over YouTube as well, saying that if the president would absolve him of his NDAs and his confidentiality agreement, and Congress subpoenaed him to testify, and they said, "Tell us everything." It says, if the president immunizes me and absolves me of this, I would tell them everything. Now, this kind of goes full circle back to what we talked about earlier. I don't even know if the president himself can issue an executive order to immunize these guys from national security classifications. I don't know. I don't think he can, to be honest with you guys. I don't think he can waive that. Yes, it's the executive branch, but the executive branch is more than just the president, and it goes deeper than that. But we're not, that's another story. In this movie, they go into all sorts of detail about the Varginha incident. The 3 girls seeing the creature, the people at the hospital, military personnel, a Marco Chirize, I think is the name of the officer who allegedly grabbed the alien, took him to the hospital, got scratched, developed some crazy infection that they could not fight. No matter what they did, they could not fight this thing. He died. Now I've seen other people, I saw other people who tried to debunk this, and there's also, you can, if you look hard enough, you'll find something where this says he was never scratched. It was an inflammation under his arm, and he got probably a septic sort of reaction in the hospital. Well, where'd the inflammation under the arm come from in the first place? That sort of thing. That's neither here nor there. The big new aspect of the new cut of this movie, before I move into your guys' thoughts about the incident in general, was the surgeon in there who had originally said, and I think I sent this to you guys, and now I got to look it up because I got this from a friend, one of the guys who I interact with quite a lot on X, is UFO Joe. And I'd sent you guys a tweet from Joe Mergia, UFO Joe. One of the issues with Venturelli's testimony, come on, pull up, there you go. One of the issues with Venturelli's testimony is how he says he saw the being in person, face to face, for 4 minutes, had telepathic communication with it, and performed surgery on it. Previously, a few years ago in a video, he had said that he was only shown a video of the creature. He never got there face to face with him. Why the change in the story? Was he afraid to tell the truth? Did he make up one story? Did he make up a different one? I don't know, but that was the big part of this thing. And the clip that I had that I wish I could play, but of course that's not going to work because our lovely in studio, which I have to complain to them and say 100 megabytes is pretty fucking small, guys. It's a pretty small clip. At the end of this thing, the last scene is very emotional because it is Venturelli sitting there talking to James Fox about how it felt to be able to come clean with this after 29 years. he gets emotional. He starts crying. He's talking about the creature being this magnificent, angelic being with no evil intentions. James breaks down as well. And that's kind of how the movie ends. Now, the idea, what I've heard from everything I've heard from James Fox is that Venturelli had a cardiac event of his own. One of the other doctors he worked with had a cardiac arrest, died in like 2018 or something like that. So this is all sensitive to him. So he has a heart attack or some cardiac event, gets the fear of God put into him, decides I'm going to come clean with all this stuff, says, no, I was there with this creature. I witnessed it for 3 to 4 minutes. And I will promise you guys at home, anybody watching this live, when you watch the final cut of this episode, I will but I'll put in there the clip I got from American Alchemy. That's like a minute and a half that you can see. It's a dramatization of this, but the alien is sitting up in the bed looking at this guy. And I mean, he got a telepathic communication from this thing, all sorts of stuff. But Rob, I want to go to you first on this because I know you had said that you'd watch Moment of Contact. I understand it's the original one. I would urge both you guys, watch the extended cut. It's worth it. Your thoughts on the Varginha incident, what you learned from this video, because your words were it was air quoting wild.
Yeah, I mean, just specific, like testimony from these people, and the 3 girls that they all saw the creature, and the guy, and again the guy made physical contact with it, and then like I guess I'd never seen this type of stuff like given this level of serious treatment. Like these folks were not like, this wasn't like, oh, look at these crazy people, ha, 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 like they were given the space just to be honest about what they had experienced. And I mean, it was just, and this wasn't just, oh, I saw something in the sky, or I was outside and it was foggy outside and I saw some strange looking thing in the distance, and it actually could give a picture of what it was. I mean, because like it's very easy just to dismiss this stuff and say, oh, they're making this up, or oh, they're hallucinating or something or other, right? And these folks, like, they didn't they didn't sound like some crazy person running up to you like on the subway or something. They sounded like normal regular people, and who had seen this or seen something just really just bizarre, and they hadn't seen. Now, no, do you just run and take what they're saying completely, wholesale? Well, no, but it's a lot easier to listening to the way they talked about it. It was a lot easier to say, you know what? I don't think they're lying.
Let me throw this out to you, Rob.
Yeah.
Let me throw this out. When you watch this video, indeed, you got through 45 minutes, so you'll be able to answer this as well. Clearly, something happened in this town. Something happened there in 1996. This wasn't some mass hallucination that these people had. Now, what exactly happened? Sure, you can debate that. But something absolutely happened there. You got the guy, and I think, DG, you get to the part where the guy takes him to the crash site, and he can't figure out where it is for a while. And then it finally dawns on him where it is, and he's like, it's here, here, here. This guy vanished for 26 years after this incident took place. And he doesn't come back for 26 years. He says, I didn't make any money off of this whole situation. I didn't get any fame. I didn't get any notoriety. How do you reconcile that? How do you explain that? If it's all bullshit, why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, that's about as far as I made it in. I think the last scene I saw was them just kind of digesting where he had, and the story that he had told about the way he watched the craft or whatever it was come down. It his verbiage was a little off. He said a 360-degree turn. It was more of a 180, and it came back down, and then it finally, went into the ground, and him trying to figure out exactly where it was. But what my takeaway, again, like Rob was saying, was just seemingly how genuine his emotion was over this situation. He saw something. He doesn't know what he saw. He's not claiming that what he saw was ABC, but he's also not ruling it out. He just, look, this is what I saw. I can't explain what it was. And it affected me very deeply to the point where, like you said, Dave, he disappeared for 20 some odd years. This happened in 96. The documentary is in what, 22?
22.
Yeah.
22.
Yeah, 2022.
So we're looking at well over 20 years before they found this guy. He made not a dime off of it. And so it's obviously he's not doing this for the publicity, or he would have done it 20 years ago. So, there's a lot of credibility and just genuine feel to his testimony here. And you have to, like Rob said, don't take it at wholesale, because everybody has an agenda with these types of things. But at the same time, I'm quick to discount a lot of eyewitnesses just for those reasons that I mentioned a minute ago. He immediately struck me as not being one of those. Like, something happened. This guy witnessed something. He believes in it with all of his being, and that comes out on the screen.
Rob, did you get to the part, DJ, you didn't get to this part, but the military from ESA, where like 3 or 4 months after the fact, they have a press conference. I don't know if you got to this part or if this was only in the new one. I don't think it was in the new one solely. I think it was in the original. But the guy who comes out in the press conference and basically like no fucks given sort of situation where he's just like, I don't have to prove shit to you. Don't you want to prove it to the press? What do I have to prove to you? This is what happened. This is all I'm telling you. Go kiss my ass. Now, he doesn't use those exact words, but it is awfully close to him basically saying that the military guy just like, I don't have to talk. I don't have to prove shit to you.
Yeah.
Just the dismissive, steadfast, prickish nature of that, where it's like, that to me felt more like I'm hiding something than anything that the other people in the rest of the movie said. Because it's like, why are you being such a prick about this if there's nothing to hide, right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Man, it's just this really was. This really was different than any type of, alien or UFO stories that I've ever heard. Just again, the way people talked about it, and so yeah, I would definitely look. If you're curious about this stuff at all, but you don't want to hear the usual like tinfoil hat kind of stuff, then I definitely recommend this. And look, now you may come away thinking that this is this is just more of the same, but it's definitely, I think it's definitely worth checking this out, because like these folks, like the guy said, he didn't make the money. He didn't make any money off of this. The people in this one, like these aren't any, like, they don't have an angle. They're not grifters or anything. They're not selling merchandise or anything like that. Like, these are folks that they have no reason to lie. They don't have an angle. And again, it is very possible and probably likely that that maybe what they thought they were seeing, they isn't exactly what was going on. And of course, yes, there is always the possibility that they're lying. But again, these folks, everyone they talk to in this thing, I'd say they're the most worth listening to of anyone that I've seen tell these kind of stories.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because like, and I'm really glad that you watched it and that it impressed you that much that you're like, there's something really going on with these guys. There's something happened here. You look at other aspects of this thing. You got the guy who was with Shirazi, right, when he got the alien, who will not talk to anybody and threatened to shoot James Fox and these guys if they didn't get off of his property, right? It's like, well, Jesus, if there's nothing to, if there's something that he felt okay talking about, he would talk about it. Instead, he's like, "Get the hell off my property before I shoot you." It's like, well, okay, that's a bit of an extreme reaction, but it kind of tells me that something's going on here. Um, you've got the family who, and this was fascinating. Like I don't know how long it was after it, but family testifying or talking about a UFO hovering above the city, doing like a search and rescue, like a grid pattern, right? Looking for their friends, their beings, their buddies who had been picked up, who crashed, and this sort of thing, looking for them. That's fascinating. And this family, like, they didn't want to be on camera. They only allowed themselves to be filmed from the back. So this is not about notoriety. This is not about grifting. It's not about making a buck. It's a very, and I mean, and James Fox has been going back to Virginia for 15 years researching this stuff, trying to unearth everything he can find. So yeah, I would say if you've seen the original, like Rob has and like DJ's seen most of it, do you necessarily have to see? There is one other thing I wanted to add though. And Pavel Ibarra over at Psychoactivo podcast, he pointed this out in his kind of like review that he did of Moment of Contact. There's an investigator at the end, and I can't remember his name right now, but this guy claims that there's a 34-second video of an interaction with Brazilian military holding the alien by the shoulders. They did not have authority to make this recording, this film, but they were so pissed off that the Americans were coming in and taking all this shit from them that they're like, fuck these guys. We're going to keep something for ourselves. Now, where that video is, who has it, whether it's ever been shown, whether anybody's ever seen it, I don't know. But I find it interesting that the Brazilian government just allowed the United States Air Force to come in and grab all this stuff. It's like, how did the United States become the gatekeepers for all this crap? And no other, if it's anything crashes in another nation, there they are. Now, maybe that's not going to work in Russia or China because you're going to start an international incident. But anyway, I would say urge anybody. This is definitely worth watching. Watch the original. If you've watched the original, then the expanded version is certainly worth your time. I would say my best estimate, 80% of what's in the new movie was in the old movie. There's maybe 20% that's new. So it's probably an 80-20 split. So take that for whatever you want. Use that for your own edification as to whether you want to spend. It's $15 on Prime, so it's $10 cheaper than Age of Disclosure. James Fox is probably the preeminent documentarian on this subject of UFOs. He's done, The Phenomenon is awesome. The Program is awesome. Moment of Contact is great. He's done some other stuff. I cannot thank James enough for all the work that he put into this. I know Jeff Nusatelli, we talked about him earlier. He's down in Virginia with James doing some stuff. So there's probably more to this that we're going to learn. But like you said, Rob, this was a documentary that's done really well. And there's just a level of believability that something was going on there. Was there an alien captured? Were there multiple aliens captured? Stuff about the smell, right? A mix of sulfur and ammonia. That can't be good. What the hell is that all about, right?
Yes, exactly.
So much stuff to talk about. Transitioning, because I do want to get us to Tunguska and get us on out of here. Did you guys see the Steven Spielberg Disclosure Day trailer? I know we talked about it on Bandwagon Nerds over the last episode. At Bandwagon Nerds, every Monday on the Chairshot Radio or the chairshot.com, you can catch Bandwagon Nerds. We did a big review of the Disclosure Day trailer. I have it here. Again, that's another clip that's too long to put in here. So sorry. But I'm sure most people listening to this on the live stream or afterwards has already seen the trailer 2,400 times by now. What do you guys think of this trailer? DJ, I want to go to you first on this thing. I know, like, you've watched the Disclosure Day trailer. What do you think of it? Is it just a movie? Or is there something bigger going on here? Because I know Patrick wanted to cede the time on Bandwagon Nerds to kind of me and Tunny on this whole thing. I've got my thoughts on it. But I want to get yours. Is it just a summer blockbuster, or do you think there's something more to this?
I think it's a summer blockbuster that is peppered with nudge, nudge, wink, winks. if you know what I mean. I think that there's a lot that's in here that he's disclosing without actually disclosing, and I think that's what we're going to get out of this. One, as a movie going, it's Spielberg, it's Aliens, and I'm already in. And it's what did I just her name just fell right out of my head, Dave. The actress.
Oh, Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt. Yeah, Spielberg, Aliens, Emily Blunt. I'm in. You know, I'm sold. But given the fact that there is likely some layers of disclosure, actual disclosure in this, veiled by artistic integrity, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I guess
What you've seen it? You've seen it, right?
I did not. I didn't get to it yet. Sorry about that. But look, a lot of with these movies,
And I would have played it for you, but this system's not cooperating. So
I'm sorry, everyone's not watching. But
it's fine. It's all Rob's fault.
Yeah, I know exactly. But but like, look with Independence Day, right? I mean, that was a complete work of fiction, but there were little tidbits of fact about Area 51.
What you said earlier, was it all fiction?
Was
it all fiction?
And because I remember watching that, I was completely, I had, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff back then, about Area 51 and all of that. So for me, even though that was just, again, completely a work of fiction, there was a little bit of eye-opening stuff there, and just, and then, I mean, if you go all the way back to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and even in some of like the the Men in Black stuff, they sprinkle in little just things, that at least pique your curiosity to find out, like, okay, well, what's really going on in these places. And because like with Area 51, there are people who believe that it is the the kind of hiding place where they stuff the crash landed alien craft. And then there are people who believe that is just a cover story for some other stuff that we're doing, right? I mean,
that's right.
So, but yeah, I mean, so look, if the ink is Steven Spielberg, so my guess is that there's going to be some stuff in there that is at least lead you to want to be curious, about what else is really going on out there.
Yeah, what I'll say about it is similar to what I said on Sunday when we talked about it. There's a lot in here. Do I think they're using Spielberg as the mechanism, the vehicle, the vestibule, whatever you want to call it, for disclosure? Probably not completely. But is he touching upon a lot of aspects that we have already kind of talked about on, in various other places, that sort of thing. He's talking about things such as potentially hybrids, because you get to see that in this thing. He's talking about 7 billion people deserve to know the truth. Well, there's 8 billion people on the earth. Where's the other billion people at? Why aren't they? Are they the hybrids? Are there a billion hybrids out here? Is it a billion people? Is it about a freeing of human consciousness as well? Is it tapping into human potential that we don't know about? I don't know, but there's symbolism with animals. That's always been a big deal with UFOs, NHI, aliens. You've also got the religious implication, right? Where you've got the nun talking about, why would he make this vast universe only for us? Exactly. Right. We've often said it on the. Go ahead, Deej.
You can't have a UAP discussion without it bleeding over into theology a little bit, because ancient myths, legends, and religion very well could have been built off of what people thought they saw tens of thousands of years ago. So there's
actually they touched on that in the first. They touched on that in the first Thor movie, from the MCU, that the Asgardians were, in the movie lore, they were aliens with godlike abilities, but they're them being seen led to the Norse God mythology and all that type of stuff.
So there's a great deal in this trailer that I'm sure when it comes out, we're going to get into it a lot deeper. It's going to be one of the biggest movies of the summer. Where we are in the whole disclosure movement by the time we get there, don't know. But we'll see. The last thing I'm going to say about this, and before we move to Tunguska, is I think the single biggest story in all of ufology this year, one story stands out to me more than any. And we've talked about some great stuff here, guys, and I thank you so much for indulging me. Beatrice Villarreal's study on the transient objects that ended up being peer reviewed is the greatest story in ufology this year, bar none. It is the best scientific evidence that we have of something. I'm not saying it's aliens to steal from ancient aliens. Not saying it's aliens, Deej, but it's aliens, that sort of thing. I'm not saying that. But Dr. Villarreal's study from the Palomar Observatory showing these transient objects that are there 1 minute and then 30 minutes later, they're not there. And all this predates Sputnik or us having anything in the atmosphere at this kind of orbital level. Yes, I've heard people say stuff like, oh, they were advanced weather balloons. No, they weren't. Stop with the weather balloon stuff, especially in this situation. Because if they were, the people who peer reviewed this before they approved this would have said, hey, Beatrice, we think these are weather balloons. They never said that. Before they had it peer reviewed, I would have said, okay, I'll listen to you. After this peer reviewed, I'm like, shut up. No, it's not what it is. They're not going to peer review and put their stamp of approval, scientists, on this if they think there's a way to, get rid of this. Now, what is up there? I don't know. It's reflective. You got the factor in the Earth's shadow. I would try and explain it, but Dr. Villarreal can do it way better than I can. She's not here. So I urge you go study that stuff. But I think that is the biggest story in ufology this year, is that she has a study that shows that there are objects in the Earth's atmosphere pre-Sputnik that all coincide with nuclear. Whenever they're testing nukes on the planet, these things would show up. There's correlation between these sightings and UFO sightings. I'm not the math major that you are, Rob, but I can say 2 and 2 equals 4. Yeah. And I can do a few of these little additions and say, okay, these things are there, then they're not. They're highly reflective. They're in low Earth orbit, or in a geosynchronous orbit probably as well. Their Earth shadow doesn't affect it. There's a correlation between their appearance and nuclear testing. There's a correlation between their appearance and UFO sightings. There's a correlation between their appearance and the UFO wave in Washington, D.C. in 1952. Yeah, if to steal from, who was it, Terrell Owens, who said if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. What do you guys think about that? To me, that's the biggest story of the year in ufology, bar none. That is because it is everybody who wants the evidence, like we were talking earlier, Rob, you were saying about science. We want the evidence. Give us something scientific. This is as scientific as you're going to get without flat out saying, yeah, they're UFOs and they're aliens. It's like there's something there that's unexplainable, that it's there and then it's not,
Well, I think it's very encouraging that it was submitted for peer review
and approved.
Yeah, and so that because that means that they're willing to subject it to scrutiny, and that if it's some should it survive the scrutiny, then that means you really got something there. And because with so many of these things, it's just again, somebody talks to somebody, they have a theory, they just kind of put it out there, but it's just kind of left up to us to decide whether or not we think it's credible or whether full of crap. So submitting it to peer review and having the possibility, because again that brings the possibility that we reviewed and that whoever reviews it will come back and say, you know what, you got nothing, right? So the willingness to subject it to that, to me, is encouraging. And then again, maybe maybe we'll come, may not come back with anything. They may review it and say, you know what, there's nothing here, man, right? But I think it is a very big, very good step to submit their findings to a higher level of scrutiny.
I know we've talked about this before. What do you think? I mean, I don't think there's a bigger story in ufology. The best scientifically based evidence that we've gotten in a very long time, short of the UFO crashing on the White House lawn, right?
Right. I think what's interesting is the appearance of these things again coinciding with the invention of nuclear technology and nuclear weapons and things like that, and nuclear testing. We've talked about that on this show before. That if we are being observed, obviously they are going to be very interested in a leap forward technologically like that. They're going to, really pay attention. Okay, this is again quoting a Marvel movie. Thor. We are ready for a higher form of war, and that again is something that they would take very seriously if they are indeed observing us. So that's my big takeaway from that, is it solidifies the technological leap forward that was the nuclear power. And as we leap forward, and we are about to leap forward in some very large technological ways here in the near future. So will this type of activity increase to coincide with those leaps forward?
Yeah, exactly. You wonder what's next as we enter the next phase of technology. If all this stuff is
to invest heavily in space travel. We've got two companies trying to get us back to the moon, between SpaceX and what is it? What's Bezos?
I forgot.
Is it Bezos that's the other one? Not Virgin, but well, whichever it is, they're the other ones that just, it's whatever. There's two competing companies right now, Major.
Yeah, you've got that. You've got China talking about trying to get to the moon.
Right.
So it's not just us. It's now
that's the next big technological step is space travel, like real manned space travel, where we set up a colony on the moon. And at that point, will these appearances coincide with that technological leap?
And we're not even getting into all the stuff like it was the Tic Tac in 2004 Lockheed Martin, which we talked about before.
Right.
Have we already cracked anti-gravity? All this stuff that if that's going on, and we did reverse engineer that from NHI or something, the true owners of that technology might come knocking sooner rather than later, because the owners of that are not Lockheed Martin. It's the guys who
very interested in what we plan on doing with that technology.
Yeah.
Exactly. So. All right. Let's get into our first side quest. Let's talk Tunguska so I can get you guys out of here tonight. This was Rob's baby, this idea, to talk about the Tunguska event. I'm not even sure. We were talking about something on one of these episodes, Rob, and I think we had gotten on this thing. So this is the historical aspect of unidentified history on this episode, and it is our first side quest. We are veering away from strictly talking about UAPs, and we're not even on the same chronological timeline. This is no longer linear. We're going back before, like we started with the Battle of LA in 1942. This goes back to 1908. And something happened high above the taiga near the I love these pronunciations. We had so much fun with Gosta Carlson and the Ghost Rockets pronouncing lakes in Iceland and Scandinavia and just butchering the shit out of that. But this is the Podkamnaya Tunguska River, central Siberia. Witnesses described a bright fireball followed by shockwaves and intense heat. Reports include people being knocked down, windows breaking far away. Instruments across Eurasia recorded seismic pressure effects despite the region's remoteness. This is the interesting part. The blast flattened roughly 2,000 to 2,150 kilometers of forest. Tens of millions of trees is what the description. Scorched portions of the surrounding area. There was no obvious impact crater found. And I know the document that I gave you guys, this document will go up on the Attitude of Aggression's website, as I like to put all the historical analysis documents, which I will fully state that these are collaborative efforts between myself and ChatGPT to put together, to re-look at these historical events with a different lens, so to speak, with me asking ChatGPT the questions and it giving me some of the answers. And some of the stuff it came up with is highly technical on this document. I did not come up with these statistics or mathematical probabilities. No, it just gives me a headache thinking about it, but it's important for the context. The main viewpoint of Tunguska and what happened is it kind of comes out into two predominant theories, right? Both of them are talking about something that was airburst above the wilderness here in Siberia. One, the more prevalent or the more popular theory is that it was a stony asteroid, because the theory being that a rocky body will tend to deposit a lot of kinetic energy explosively when it fragments under intense pressure heat, which is what, of course, a stony asteroid entering the atmosphere is going to be subjected to that, matching blast-like damage patterns, leaving sparse microscopic debris. So it gets very technical. The other theory that's less likely, but still accepted by a lot of people, is a small comet. A cometary fragment, maybe not the full comet, but a fragment broke loose. It could have airburst. They say it might explain why macroscopic meteorite fragments are so scarce, such as ice and dust, are less likely to survive as big chunks on the ground. This is not as popular as the stony asteroids theory. There are some other interesting theories we're going to talk about in a moment, but I wanted to go, Rob, this is your baby here, man. Tunguska, your thoughts on this event, and what do you think? Asteroid or comet? It seems pretty obvious. It should have been an asteroid. The comet one doesn't seem to fly so well, but certainly something was airburst above Siberia in 1908 and did immeasurable damage. And luckily, nobody's there. If 10 million trees get flattened in the woods and no one's there to hear it, it still happen? Apparently so.
And just I mean, it's just fascinating because this thing, it came down and it dispersed without leaving like a impact crater of any kind. And then and it had wiped out all these trees for all these miles. But then closer in, there were some trees that were still there, but just had been stripped of the bark, kind of like an eye of the hurricane kind of situation. And yeah, I mean, this is because I mean, it was this was a very big blast, but it was not like, it wasn't like an extinction level event kind of thing, thankfully. But it's one of those things that kind of looked kind of something that like might be that. And yeah, I mean, I think you gotta go asteroids. I think a comet, would have. Yeah, I think a comet probably would have left more of an impact or something, when it hit. And whereas this kind of dispersed, this kind of burst, right above the ground.
Yeah, I think like a comet would have had to be fairly large and going fairly fast to survive the heat of re-entry, and be able to. I mean, yeah, that's the thing, is there is no impact crater, and probably that was the luckiest part about this. Had that impacted the ground, then extinction level event, maybe not, but the damage would have been far more significant had this thing struck the ground, I would imagine. DJ, what are your thoughts on just the overall Tunguska event? I know they mentioned it in Ghostbusters. We know that much. They talk about it in Ghostbusters.
Absolutely fascinating to me. I remember reading about this as a kid and just being mind blown, because obviously the imagery of the trees just being flattened out for as far as the eye can see, and you try to wrap your head around the magnitude of that type of explosion. Again, we're talking almost 40 years before Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So, as humans, we cannot fathom that type of explosion, that type of damage. So, yeah, very, very fascinating. I do believe it was an asteroid. It was some type of mix of metallic and rock thing that just got superheated, exploded. As far as the lack of macroscopic evidence, when something it vaporized itself. When something explodes with that magnitude, there's going to be very little tangible debris, and a lot of the debris that's there is going to mix with the soil. And it's going to be hard to determine what is native soil versus what is foreign introduced material. So I'm not surprised at all they found very little evidence there. Also, if it was a mid-air explosion, obviously you're not going to get an impact crater. So, from a scientific standpoint, you can look at all these things and you can tell pretty much what it probably was and what it definitely was not. So that's really right now. There's a larger discussion that I want to have towards the tail end of this. So as I look at the end of the document, that kind of builds upon the extinction level event thing and kind of circles back around to the whole reason we have these discussions.
Right. We're going to get into, I don't know how much we'll get into the stat discussion of it. I would say look at the document for yourself when it goes up, because that'll explain it better. But yeah, this it's a great example of, boy, it could have been a lot worse. It really could have been a lot worse. And if it happened now, think about how bad it could actually be. Man, let's tie this into the UFO UAP. Because this is what this show is about. There are actually some theories out there that this could be UFO UAP related. I don't buy it. I will tell you that right now. And the whole legit or bullshit meter that we typically use, DJ, I'm going to say right now, bullshit. This was not UAP related.
Bullshit.
But you raised the point of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and when you look at the devastation that was done there, it starts to make me wonder: did these people working on the bomb, did they look at that devastation and say, hey, if we can replicate that, look at what we could do? Now, I don't know that for sure, whether that was any sort of motivating factor where people looked at what happened here and said, hey, there's something to be we could replicate that. We could end all sorts of conflict. Now, granted, this is 37 years before Hiroshima, but one of the theories related to UFOs and UAPs on this whole thing, the exploded alien spacecraft theory, right? After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Soviet sci-fi writer Alexander Kazantsev popularized a story version idea that Tunguska resembled a nuclear-powered spaceship accident. So an airburst nuclear-powered spaceship. The concept spilled beyond science fiction, became a recurring, maybe it was a craft theory in pop culture. I don't necessarily see that. But in support of that, you go back to the whole thing, no impact crater. So could this have been a nuclear-powered spaceship that exploded above, like an airburst nuke? Okay. There's nothing around there. If there was that, then you would have an electromagnetic displacement as well, probably, right? But there's nothing there to react with this thing, an EMP, right? But there's nothing there to react with it that way.
Like I was in Ocean's 11 when they were talking about the pinch, how it turns out all the lights,
Yes, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like DJ, you remember that movie The Day After, right? The movie that scared the shit out of us when we were kids. You remember before the nuke hits, the first bomb that is sent there is an EMP, right? It takes out everybody. It takes out all the lights. It takes out all the cars on the highway. Then the nuke hits. So there's a strong belief that in a nuclear event, there's an electromagnetic pulse as well that disables everything. Now, obviously in Siberia, who the hell knows? Because there's nothing there. The yaks aren't getting affected by this sort of stuff, that sort of thing. But other possible UAP related variation of this is that this could have been a couple of UAPs fighting with each other, which of course ties into some of the stuff we've talked about with like some of the things that Skywatcher has done, where they've seen, or it seems like maybe there's more than one UAP there at the time. There could be more than one species. Maybe they were fighting with each other. Was this a shoot down? Was this one UAP got the better of the other one? And okay, there's no real solid theory about that sort of thing. This one I found was interesting. There are some apparent modern expeditions where groups have claimed that they found signs of an alien craft at Tunguska. Obviously, this has been treated skeptically by those who think that this is an asteroid comet, and it should be. This is something that ChatGPT came up with. I'm not sure there's much in the way of support for this. I've never heard of them coming up with any sort of strange metal or materials at Tunguska. Have you guys? I don't know about that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. It's fun though from the standpoint of from the explanation of how these things these stories kind of take on a life of their own. Well, we don't have an impact crater. Maybe it was this. This looks like a nuclear explosion, which is great. You can come back and you can retcon this and say, well, that looks like Hiroshima. But if you saw it in 1908, you'd be like, I don't know what the hell that looks like, but I've never seen shit like that before.
Yeah.
So that's fun, and it's outside the box. The other three ones that have been prevalently thrown out there that aren't UAP related, that to me are more interesting though, from the standpoint of, okay, there may be more plausibility to this, but they're each equally terrifying, right? So the antimatter object hypothesis, the core idea here, this is one of the alternative theory about Tunguska. A meteorite comet fragment contained a meaningful amount of antimatter. When it hit the atmosphere antimatter annihilation would convert mass directly into energy, producing a Tunguska scale blast without leaving a normal meteorite or crater. This one kind of scares the shit out of me, guys, to be honest with you, because the thought of antimatter entering the gravity or entering our atmosphere through a meteorite or comet, because one of the things is, dark matter is out there in the universe, antimatter is out there. We don't know what it is or exactly what it does, but anybody who's a nerd or a superhero fan, right, DJ? The anti-monitor, right? And what that thing does to the entire universe. So when I hear antimatter, I think anti-monitor, I think universal cataclysm and destruction.
It destroyed the multiverse.
The whole anti-life equation and everything. And
in reality, this one actually has a respectable moment. In 1965, Cohen, Alturi, and Libby published a Nature paper proposing possible antimatter content for the Tunguska body, tying it to radiocarbon 14C. Now, I don't understand a lot of that technical jargon. I'm sure there are people out there, and I can name a few of them if I want. Hey, you guys, UAP GERB, if you're listening to this thing, please do some research on this for me. I'd appreciate it because you do great work. Rob Jones, those kind of guys. But the idea that antimatter could have somehow entered the Earth's atmosphere and this kind of reaction. Yeah, you talk about the atomic bomb, Deej, that sort of thing. Anybody who's looking at this thing, and if this was antimatter involved here, they're going to get the idea pretty quickly. Say, if we harness that next, we're in control, right?
Very much so. Very much. And again, we're back to control and all of that.
Was it that was a proto matter that was in the Genesis Matrix from Star Trek? That all that kind of stuff you talk about, possibly terraforming planets and things of that nature. And I mean, that's some really, really heavy, scary stuff.
Some of it borders into science fiction, but a lot of science, as we've accepted it now, started as science fiction.
I mean, all this stuff is like, the big stigma against UFOs is that it's all science fiction, right? Until it's not. until you start looking at this thing and think, well, maybe not, that sort of thing. It's a fun theory. I don't know how much real meat on the bone is there for that, but I would say that that's more likely than this being a UAP exploded, airburst UAP exploding. I think antimatter has more heft to it than that. This is an interesting one, the micro black hole, primordial black hole hypothesis. So the core idea in 1973, Jackson and Ryan published another short Nature paper, Nature is the name of the magazine, I think, asking whether Tunguska could be caused by a tiny black hole passing through Earth, often framed as a primordial black hole. This is an interesting one, right? Because we've, this is a theory that we've heard about. What are portals, right? A Einstein-Rosen bridge, right? You hear this going back to Thor. You know what? We need to go back and watch that first Thor because there's a lot of shit in there that I didn't think about. But an Einstein-Rosen bridge, wormholes opening up. What is a wormhole? It's a traversable black hole, basically, right? That sort of thing. So, could have been some sort of black hole-like reaction above the Tunguska plains that did all this? I don't know.
Or it's hyperspace from Star Wars. It's like you enter this kind of bent or folded, space, and then you fly through it, and then you come out of it.
The only thing that I would use to counter the black hole argument is that if you think of a traditional black hole and what it does with matter and energy, it sucks it in, not projects it out. And we're talking about an explosion that just generated a tremendous, I would almost think that this was more like a miniature Big Bang than a black hole, because the Big Bang is what expanded everything that is in the known universe out from a singular point, whereas black holes are ultimately sucking all of that back into a singular point.
Yes, at least from the entry point. But that's kind of the concept, is like, okay, if this was a primordial black hole, what if what was happening at Tunguska was the exit wound, right? And not the entry point. The entry point is, like you're saying, DJ, sucking all light, gravity, matter, all that stuff in one end. We've always wondered what's at the opposite end. It's got to come out somewhere, right? Or unless it just goes into a void.
Right.
So what if Tunguska is the exit of whatever's on the other end of this thing? Could that produce this kind of
the devil's
effect
anus
that you're talking? The devil's anus.
It's the devil's anus. We're back to the Thor movies.
It's Thor 3, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Anybody listening on this live stream, take a look at Thor a little bit, man. These guys, Taika Waititi, it wasn't just about cracking jokes, I get. Shit. So, he might have known something in Thor 3. It's fascinating. And you do think about, okay, if this was a black hole, like if you're like what you're saying, if what's over Tunguska is like a portal or some sort of entry point to an Einstein-Rosen bridge or some sort of traversable black hole, primordial black hole, if it's the entry point, then I'm with you all the way, DJ. There's no way that they could have done that because everything's going in. If it's the exit of a black hole from somewhere else in the universe, then you start asking some difficult questions, and start thinking, maybe there's something to that.
Yes.
So go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just agreeing with you.
The third one, and this is the fun one, the Tesla death ray theory. And I was like, whoa, okay, Nikola Tesla, I know he did some wild shit. But the theory here is that he may have fired some kind of directed energy weapon, death ray, whatever you want to call it, into Tunguska. Tesla was obviously a very interesting guy. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of myths and mythology about Tesla kind of developing secret super weapons, right? And testing these things out. Now, is this a way to kind of retcon him into this whole narrative? Probably, that sort of thing. The conspiracy theories about this is that the Wardenclyffe project, which is one of these, I think it's one of the secret weapons projects, had already shut down well before 1908. So that couldn't really be the issue. But I do, it's interesting. I go back to Age of Disclosure, which I know you guys hadn't seen. But one of the things that Eric Davis had talked about in Age of Disclosure was, I believe in like 1989, the Soviets recovered a UFO in a crash. And on that UFO, they found a directed energy weapon, right? That's what they said. Now, of course, this raises questions. Was the energy weapon functional? Was it still working? Could they fix it? Could they reverse engineer it? When you start hearing direct energy weapons found in Russia, and then you've got this wild theory about Tesla possibly developing an early direct energy weapon and firing it off above the plains of Tunguska, I would say that this is I would probably put this lower than even the UFO UAP theory, but it's kind of fun and science fiction-y. And would I put it past Tesla to develop the weapon of this magnitude? No. But were they testing it out over the sparse, unpopulated plains of Siberia? Probably not. What do you guys think?
Interestingly enough, and I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts on that. I was on when I was waiting to clock in for work today, I was flipping around on Instagram, and one of the pages that I follow on Instagram has like weird historical facts and figures. And today's post was about inventions that were conceived but never followed through on. And one of the ones that was part of that series was Nikola Tesla's energy weapon. I find that very, very coincidental that I saw that this morning. When I was reading through the document earlier tonight before the show, I started laughing because I'm like, holy shit, that just came up on Instagram not 12 short hours ago while I was waiting to get started for work. That's just blows my mind how this all ties together.
And I
Do you
mean,
want me to know what ChatGPT said is in your search history, DJ? I can tell you right now, but no, I won't do that. I won't do that.
well, this goes back to Thor again with like the Tesseract.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly, man.
so
Anybody want to get some Infinity Stones out here?
right.
Um,
A lot of movie
let's get
tie-ins
into
tonight, and I'm going to tie them in even a little more here in just a few minutes.
yeah. So let's get to the end of this thing. Because I know we wanted to talk about this and kind of give you a picture of how big this explosion was by kind of like modern standards. What would happen? Because I think one of the big things about this that when I put this document together, Deej, Rob, is I'd ask ChatGPT, look, tell me what can we learn about Tunguska that could help modern society? You know, certain things about the event that took place. And what can we learn to prevent an even bigger cataclysm? Because I specifically asked it, if this had happened above, say, New York City or Los Angeles, what kind of numbers are we looking at, right?
Yeah.
And this is where you get into some really, it is a real world demonstration of a risk of a city killer. Maybe not an extinction level event or a global killer, but a city killer, absolutely. And you know, there's a lot of a lot of statistics that it came up with on this thing, but I want to go straight to, you know, and there was they did talk about, and this is true because I forgot that this incident took place in 2013 in Chelyabinsk, was a much smaller airburst sort of event, right? And I actually remember this one. Blew out windows over a large area, injured approximately 1,600 people, mostly from broken glass, because people saw the flash, they rushed to the windows, everything exploded, and a lot of people got cut, and a lot of people got hurt. Um, and that was a minor event. You scale that up to the Tunguska class, okay, and put it over a dense metropolitan area. The New York City scenario, this is an interesting one. Scope of damage, a +5 PSI zone centered over Manhattan likely would mean massive building damage across large parts of Manhattan, adjacent boroughs such as New Jersey. A much larger region would have window failures, facade damage, casualties. This is where it gets real. Plausibly tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, depending heavily on the burst height, whether large building collapses or firestorms occur. The thing about New York is all skyscrapers, right? An airburst event over Manhattan is a major problem. Right? I mean, a major problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Injuries, plausibly hundreds of thousands to over 1 million in the wider glass damage region, especially given New York City's density and glass heavy mid-high rise environment. By comparison and contrast, let's go across to my backyard, Los Angeles. Same radius-based physics apply, but here's the difference. LA's lower average density spreads the casualties out. So, you know, like New York, we've often talked about it, that the population of New York is roughly double LA. In 20% of the square mileage, because New York's all straight up, right? Everything is up in New York.
It's very densely populated per the square mile, yes.
And it goes and it rises, whereas LA is very densely populated, but it's all spread out. So it's going to be a different sort of thing. And LA's not as dependent. Yes, downtown LA has got a bunch of skyscrapers and stuff like that. But when you talk about LA, the density spread out. The LA basin still has millions of people. Trust me, I've sat in traffic and I know there's millions of assholes down there. So there's massive infrastructure disruption, casualties, plausibly tens of thousands, could be higher with bad luck, depending on the burst height and the location and the time. And that's very true. You know, this thing goes off at rush hour, bad news. Of course, in LA, every day is a rush hour, but injuries, plausibly hundreds of thousands, driven by glass and secondary impacts, traffic collisions, structural failures, fires. Would this thing mimic the impact of an earthquake? Could the force of this thing trigger like the San Andreas fault or one of the fault lines? That's another big issue. Unlike a nuclear detonation, an airburst asteroid has no nuclear fallout. So there's some good news, right? We don't have to worry about dying of radiation. But you got the blast, you got the flying glass, you got building failure, you got fires, mass disruption. FEMA's going to have to respond to this like a nuclear explosion. it's a mess. So I think and Deej, I know you want to tie this in, so I want to go right over to you on this thing. But I think that's important to keep in context. We got very lucky with Tunguska that it occurred over a place where there's like nobody, right? Nobody was there. You put this in any major metropolitan city anywhere around the world, and the ramifications and the disaster is amplified 10 to 50 times more than anything you got in just in human casualty, loss of life, injury, property damage, disruption of daily living, facilities, utilities. I put that in there because I really wanted to get a modern feel of what would this event have been like had it been somewhere else.
Because well,
I go to
imagine
you, sir.
imagine New York like 9/11 on a larger scale.
Yeah.
I mean,
Where
you had the detonation in the World Trade Center, and you had all this. You had the smoke and the debris, and everything flying everywhere and all this type of stuff. So just imagine on a much larger scale.
Yeah. Where I was going to tie this in, and again, going back to a movie quote, I go back to probably not the greatest example, but realistic in the context of what we're discussing here, Armageddon. There's a scene in Armageddon. You remember Armageddon? We've got this comet coming towards the Earth, and the president looks at, and I forget his character's name. I think his name was Truman or something like that. It was Billy Bob Thornton's character, and the president's, well, why didn't we see this coming? And he's like, well, our national budget only allows for so much, and we can only pay attention to like 10% of the sky. And begging your pardon, but it's a big ass sky. There's a lot going on out there, and there's a lot out there that we don't pay attention to because budgetary, we're not allotted. It's not in there. People don't take space exploration and space monitoring seriously. And this is why I defend the private space race, because people will get on the internet and they're, well, all these billionaires, they could be doing better things with their money and helping the people out on Earth. In a way, they are. The government is not spending enough money to monitor the sky. And I know this happened hundreds of millions of years ago, but a comet, an asteroid, or something landed in the Atlantic basin and changed the course of life on this planet. Took out the dinosaurs, changed this planet fundamentally. If we don't think that is possible, that it could happen again, you're out of your minds. And the Tunguska, incident is very indicative of something that is real. And really, like, as you just pointed out, David, like the end of this document talks about, if that had happened over a populace, we're having a very, very different discussion about all this. We need to be aware of that. We need to be cognizant of the fact that it can happen again. We need to be able to detect when it could happen. And more importantly, and this is where the disclosure part of this all ties together, we need to be able to defend ourselves from it should such a situation arise. And if we have technology out there that we've gotten our hands on that we're just letting sit there because we don't want to tell the public about it, again, we're talking about a public safety risk. And if we have the means to defend ourselves and protect ourselves from these threats that we can't even see, then yeah, by all means, we need to move forward there. And that's why I support any space exploration, as long as that is all part of the process. And I support the disclosure of this type of information. I think it's crucially important.
Yeah, to your point, before I turn it over to Rob, everybody's looking for that global killer, right? Right? Everybody's in the skies looking for that big asteroid that's going to wipe us out. You don't need anything that big. A Tunguska level event would not be a planet killer. But can you imagine the damage that this would bring? An event of this magnitude in a major metropolitan area. Would it annihilate life as we know it? No. Would it kill hundreds of thousands? Yes. That's why, like you're saying, Deej, you got to take this stuff seriously.
Let's parlay that into something that we've discussed on this show very recently, the 3-1 Atlas. What if they had been something that was on a direct trajectory with Earth? What are we doing about it? Are we just going to watch it all the way home? I mean, so yeah, we're lucky we even found that thing because people were out there looking at it. So yeah, by all means, fund that type of research, fund that type of observation.
Exactly. The thing is, these airburst events, everybody's talking about it's going to be a crater. Something's going to hit the ocean. It's going to trigger this 100-foot tall, 100-mile tall tsunami. No, man. If it's airburst and it's something like this, all you got to look at all those trees and extrapolate that to skyscrapers. That sort of thing. I think
or like
the big thing that Shabalinsk taught us, the big takeaway that's at the end of this document, the flash then boom delay. If you see a flash, don't rush to the window. Maybe that's like really good advice. Get the fuck away from anything that's glass and shatterable because you're going to get hurt. And Shabalinsk, whatever how you pronounce it, taught us that, yeah, your instinct may be to go and see, hey, what was that? You should go in the opposite direction. Rob, this event was your baby. I yield the floor to you, my friend.
Yeah, just again thinking about the things to think of, like or think of the weapon from Independence Day when they shot it down into the Empire State Building, and then like the blast just went out over the whole city. Think of things like that, or the world engine from Man of Steel when in Metropolis, and
yeah,
and it was widespread. So just think of things like that when you think of like just again not extinction level events, but just things that can just cause a catastrophic amount of damage, kill a lot of people. If something like that, is those things, if something like that is in the realm of possibilities, and then and if we know about it, then yeah, our our governments, plural, should be working on something to intervene or intercept it, or at least minimize the damage, whatever that might be. And so to that end, I mean, it is worth bringing these subjects up, because like none of this is like, it's not possible until it happens, right? And then when it happens, you better be ready, because if you're not,
No, to your point though, like Marco Rubio in Age of Disclosure said almost the same thing, right? We didn't think Pearl Harbor was possible because we didn't think they could torpedo us in that shallow water till it happened. Nobody thought that terrorists would actually like train for a year and jump on our airplanes and use our own planes against us until it happened. Nobody thinks that an airburst asteroid could happen and do cataclysmic damage to a city until it happens, because we're all looking for the big one, right? The big one. And like when you live out in California, hey man, a fucking 6.5 or 7 magnitude earthquake will do a lot of damage. You don't need the 9 to destroy the whole state. To what was Loma Prieta was like a 6.9. Right? You look at all the damage that did to San Francisco all those years ago, or Northridge, or something like that. So you don't need the be-all, end-all cataclysmic event to be a huge problem. And like you're saying, we need to take this seriously. And I really hope that people are looking at this from the standpoint of, hey, um, maybe we should be looking closer and seeing what out there is a threat that, hey, if this asteroid that's not that big, if it airbursts above Oklahoma City, even something like that, and devastates the whole city, what kind of cataclysm are we talking about at that point? You're still looking at hundreds of thousands of lives lost, right?
Yeah.
You can't just, you got to almost look micro on this one rather than macro a little bit, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah,
Absolutely.
because we have these dense population centers all over the world, and because look, if the thing comes down, they can take out the whole planet, then there's nothing we can do anyway, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right. Yeah, it's like, well, okay.
Like
Time to party. Time to
Yeah.
party. It's all over.
Yeah, but if you look, if you see the see the dolphins jumping up out of the water saying thanks for all the fish, then we're yeah,
It's true. That's very true.
but but there are a bunch of things that are potentially just very damaging that could be alleviated, or at least mitigated.
Yeah.
And look, all of these things, all of our technology, all of our national security measures were, you know, basically they were birthed in people thinking forward about things that seemed that no one else was thinking about, things that just seemed utterly impossible. Um, just all of these things, like whether it's space travel or smartphones, encryption, different types of weaponry, um, you know, or even just airplane, cars, they were all, they all started with somebody considering something that no one else was thinking about, or something just completely far-fetched or impossible.
Yeah.
And so, in the name of defense or in mitigating, things that could
Disaster, yeah.
people. I mean, it requires people to be thinking about this stuff. It requires people who are thinking about the stuff that we're not thinking about. And it requires people to be forward thinking and they consider all types of possibilities. And because again, a lot of stuff like, some of the stuff like, again, you don't know until it happens, right? But if you know, when you do know, then you should act on it right ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Teej, you got anything to add so I can turn you guys loose?
No, I'm good, man. I had everything that I wanted to say. I said.
I want to say this to you guys before we cut out of here tonight. I want to say something because I'm like looking at the count on X, and we are sitting right now at 108 people on here right now, and I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning into this show. That's probably the highest live number we have. I want to say this to the community out here, anybody watching, because I want to get this out of the way. We've only been doing unidentified history since May. And this is a topic I've been interested in my whole life. It was a topic that to get out of my comfort zone, which is pro wrestling podcaster for 11 years now. Shout out to the 11th annual Swaggies that is coming up next week. Hopefully you guys will be here. If you're a pro wrestling fan, tune in. It is our end of the year award show that is so big. It's in 2 parts. Sorry, I did steal that from WWE. I don't think Hunter cares. But we got out of our comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, and deviated away from pro wrestling a little bit to do the Game Gone Wrong, the Game of Thrones series with DJ and Tony, which I absolutely love. That we are coming back with something for Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I'll have to figure out what we're going to call that. But this I'm putting out there because I have made a lot of great connections in the UFO community this year with some awesome, super smart, super cool people. I want to implore you guys, there's 100 of you guys watching, please try and get along with each other. The infighting with the UFO community right now, especially this week, has been very disheartening. I flat out refuse to take a side. If anybody asks me to take a side, I'm going to respectfully say no, because this should all be about getting to the truth, right? What is the truth out there? It's not what is my truth or what I want the truth to be, or what DJ wants the truth to be, or what Rob wants the truth to be. It is what is the truth? Are we alone? What is the true nature of the phenomenon? It's okay if people disagree. It's okay if people get angry at each other, even emotional. But some of the stuff that's been going on the past few days with, lines in the sand being drawn, I would implore you guys to really think twice about that and try and find a common ground. It doesn't have to be all end all. The truth of the matter is that the truth is probably somewhere in between, right? That's always how these things work out. It's not black or white. The truth is almost always somewhere in the middle. So I implore anybody watching, please try and get along. We're just making it easier on the debunkers and the skeptics. It's like a passive ability in a video game, right? It's just there all the time. They don't need to debunk shit. We're doing it to ourselves. We're dividing our own community. United we stand, divided we fall. That goes back to ancient Greece, guys. That is not something that came up with in World War II. So I would implore everybody, please try and dial it down a notch, find some common ground. talk to people, get along a little bit better. It's very disheartening, this what has happened the past few days, with this divisiveness. And if you tell me I'm full of shit, that's fine. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. I'm just saying I would rather have people try and get along and find common ground. DJ, you look like you want to say something.
My advice to you folks, piggybacking off of what Dave said, pro wrestling fans do that shit. Don't be like pro wrestling fans.
No, you're absolutely right. There is too much commonality between the communities, which you would never. When I first started doing this, I thought, God, it's going to be nice to get away from all this tribalism and all this bullshit.
Nope, you jumped right into it.
WWE versus AEW debate. I don't have to deal with that with the UFO guys. We're all either you're a believer or you're not. Well, I was way wrong on that. Way wrong. There are degrees of believability. There are cliques. There are factions within ufology as well. And I see that every day. The more I'm into this stuff, it is beyond ironic to think about where I came from, where I still do. I'm still made primarily the pro wrestling podcaster. This has become my secondary passion, that sort of thing. But yeah, the the commonalities are shocking. You would never think in a million years there could be much in common with pro wrestling and ufology. You'd be wrong about that. So anyway, before we cut out of here, I do want to thank you guys. And I know Tony's listening at home because he can't talk because of his sore throat, but he's been texting us a lot as this has been going on. Could not have done this without you guys. We've covered some really cool events so far. Moving forward with unidentified history into 2026, we got some really good stuff coming up. We're going to enter 1947. I mean, the first thing we're going to talk about when we come back is going to be the Kenneth Arnold sighting, which is what started the whole thing off. That's what started UFOs, flying saucers. We got that coming up. We got Roswell coming up. I am going to do more of these little side quests, like what Rob came up with for Tunguska. I've got a really good list I've got, kind of working off of. I know, DJ, you've mentioned in the past about some events that you may want to talk about. This show will still be primarily a UAP related show, but I think over 2026 is probably going to be like that 80-20 thing we talked about. It's going to be 80% UFOs, 20% we'll talk about some other cool stuff, because the paranormal aspect of things is really cool to get into. And I know you've got things we want to do, things that I want to do. So we will be going in that direction when we come back in 2026. I will get more guests on the show. I'll reach out to more people. On the pro wrestling side, the whole idea of chasing down interviews just burnt me out. I know Tony feels the same way. When we used to be chasing down interviews all the time and talking to Hall of Famers, it's fun and it's great talking to people, but it's a lot of work. And I wasn't quite sure whether I wanted to do that, especially because there are so many great UFO podcasts who have fantastic witnesses on there who've been doing this forever. Guys like Andy over at that UFO podcast, Dan Zetterstrom at What It Means to Be Human, Pavel Ibarra over at Seco Activo, James Iandoli, who's been on the show and engaging the phenomenon, just to name a few. Ryan Sprague from Somewhere in the Skies as well. Just to name some of the guys that I've talked with the most. They're doing great work and have great interviews. But I'll get more people on there this year. But that's going to do it. Yeah, we've got the Swaggy Awards coming up for pro wrestling. We'll come back on Unidentified History Talk, Kenneth Arnold. I'll try and get some people involved with the UFO community to help us with some of these big events. People who know more than me, because I know you guys think I know a lot, but I don't know shit. Yeah, that sort of thing. But I can fake it very well. And then we've got Night of the Seven Kingdoms coming up, DJ. So, guys, again, thank you. I would not have been able to do this without you. You guys are awesome. I cannot express to you how much I appreciate you guys coming on this journey with me and indulging this stuff with me. I hope you're enjoying yourself and having a good time. Let me go to the genius himself, Rob Burnett. Rob, let people know, where can they check you out on social media and follow the Oh-So Genius one?
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at RBONNE1. And I believe I have the same tag on Blue Sky also. And of course, you can hear me and DJ every week on the Mindless Wrestling podcast. And every few weeks, you can hear me on my own show, the Rob the Genius podcast.
DJ? when you're not taking snapshots of your sexiness, to put on your Twitter profile, man. This guy's like, he's like what, 54 now? Is that how old you are? 53 or something like that?
52.
52. The man's shredded, folks. Look at his profile picture. TJ, when you're not giving people beard tips or how to get a six-pack when you're over 50, where can people check you out on social media, man? I got it. You look
If you
great.
want to see the
I'm just going to put
over
it out there.
50
You look
six-pack,
great.
Thank you, man. It's taken a lot of work and a lot's gone into that. If you want to check out the over 50 abs, you can find me at the Mindless Pod on the app formerly known as Twitter. You can listen to myself, Rob, and Jason as part of the Chairshot Radio Network. We are the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. Again, talking largely pro wrestling. We do try to mix in some movies and real life stuff in there. We also have a YouTube presence. It's the Mindless Wrestling Podcast. Don't post as much there as I'd like to. I'm hoping in 2026, as part of my initiative to further promote not only that show, but my other creative projects that I have going on, I will be doing more on that as well. But we are the Mindless Wrestling Podcast.
Make sure you check DJ on TikTok, your models, not your modeling.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. That's my other side
not your
hobby.
Six-pack, your actual models.
No, I'm not modeling. I build model cars. It's DJ Models, DEEJAY Models, MOD. I think it's DJ Models. Maybe. I don't even know. Yeah, just look it up.
From my standpoint, for the when you're over 50 and don't want abs like these or anything like that, you can follow me on X at Attitude Ag. That is at Attitude AGG. That's where I'm most active. There is a Facebook page, facebook.com/attitude of aggression. Please go there, hit the like button, check out the YouTube channel, which is the Attitude of Aggression YouTube channel. You can also, of course, go to the website, attitudeofaggression.com, where I do realize that I have to go and backfill some of the episodes because when I switched away from Libsyn, all this stuff went away. Isn't that magical of them? Thank you guys so much for that. I got to go and retcon all that stuff. If you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, hit the hype button, comment, whatever the situation is. On Spotify, on Apple, if you like what we're doing, please leave us a 5-star review. And yeah, we're on TikTok as well. I think it's under my name, David Unger 68. So that sort of thing. But we're doing stuff over there. We're all over the place. That is going to do it for this episode of Unidentified History, the year in ufology, and a bonus. We talked about Tunguska. The next time around, we will be covering the Kenneth Arnold sighting. Hopefully we'll get somebody in here to help run us through that event because it's a big one, as big as it's the biggest event we've done so far on this show. But until next time, that's going to do it for this edition of Unidentified History. To the 109 of you right now who are in here right now, thank you so much for joining us on this day after Christmas. Hope we gave you something to entertain you with. We will catch you soon for more of this stuff. On behalf of myself, Tunny, DJ, and Rob, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to everybody. We'll be catching you guys in 2026. So long.